Close your eyes, breathe in slowly, letting the air fill your lungs. The day's noise, the chatter of work, the glow of screens, let it all drift away. Tonight, we step into another world, another time, a place where the night is alive with whispers, where silk curtains conceal secrets, and where the price of desire could be more than you ever bargained for. Tonight, we walk into the forbidden pleasure houses of ancient China. And the truth is, you would not last a single night. Imagine yourself centuries ago, standing on a narrow street that twists like a snake through the heart of a city. The year is somewhere in the Ming Dynasty. Lanterns swing from carved wooden beams, their orange glow painting the cobblestones with flickering light. Paper charms are pasted on doorways to ward off evil spirits. But the shadows between buildings are thick, heavy, and filled with voices you cannot quite place. At first, there is laughter, sweet, lilting laughter that seems to spill out of the upper windows and drift into the night. You hear the plucked strings of a pipa, the soft roll of a drum, and the gentle trill of a flute. The melodies twist through the air like smoke from the sticks of incense that line the street. The fragrance is overwhelming: sandalwood, jasmine, and something stronger, more intoxicating, that makes your head swim. The crowd here is unlike the noisy bustle of the market. Officials in long embroidered robes pass silently, their attendants carrying lanterns. Scholars with scrolls tucked under their arms whisper to one another, pretending they have come for philosophical debates, not the women who wait behind painted screens. Merchants in silk tunics walk nervously, clutching their coin purses, half afraid of thieves, half afraid of being seen. And everywhere above the crowd, painted eyes follow you. From balconies, women lean forward, their hair pinned in elaborate coils, their faces powdered pale, lips brushed with crimson. Some smile and beckon. Others only glance down, their gazes unreadable. These are the courtesans of the Eldol, Yu Zhan, the greenhouses, the houses of pleasure. The name itself is a kind of mask, El Yuchan, a soft, poetic phrase, like the jade-colored tiles that glitter in the moonlight. But behind those doors lies a world far less romantic, a world of transaction, survival, and danger. You step closer, curious. Your shoes scuff on damp stone. To your left, a wooden sign hangs above a doorway, painted with flowers that have begun to peel. A doorman, dressed in faded silk, glances at you and then looks away, as if to say, "Yes, you are welcome here, but you must know what you are doing." You don't. Not really. Still, you step inside. The air changes the moment the heavy doors close behind you. Outside, the night smelled of incense and smoke. Inside, it is thick with perfume, the sweetness of plum wine, and the musk of too many bodies packed into a single hall. The flicker of lanterns is softer here, filtered through silk, screens painted with peonies, cranes, and mountains. The shadows are deep, the corners darker than they should be. Music drifts from a raised platform. Two women pluck zithers, their fingers flashing like dragonflies over taut strings. Beside them, a girl in flowing robes sings in a voice that trembles like porcelain, struck by a fingernail. Her song tells of longing of a fisherman waiting for a lover who never returns from sea. The men in the room murmur approval, though some eyes are elsewhere, following the glide of attendants carrying cups of warmed rice wine. A woman in green silk approaches you. She bows, her sleeves trailing along the floor like streams of water. Her smile is painted on with bright vermilion, and her teeth glimmer under the lantern's glow. "Honored guest," she says softly, "you are far from home. Will you not sit? Will you not drink?" You nod, though your throat is dry. She leads you across the creaking wooden floor to a low table. A servant boy hurries over with a pot of tea, but the woman waves it away. "Tonight," she says, "you drink something stronger." A cup is placed before you. The liquid inside is cloudy, perfumed with herbs you cannot name. You raise it to your lips. The taste is bitter at first, then oddly sweet. It burns, then numbs. The room sways slightly. The laughter from above grows louder, the song more haunting, and you realize already you are not in control. The pleasure houses were not mere dens of physical indulgence. They were stages, illusions built of silk and candlelight, where men came not only for the touch of a courtesan, but for the fantasy she created. These women were trained from childhood in poetry, music, calligraphy, and dance. They could quote Confucian classics as easily as they could pour wine. They were artists, entertainers, companions, and sometimes spies. But beneath the polish, the truth was darker. Many of these women were sold into the Lu-san as children, their families too poor to keep them, or desperate for coin in times of famine. Some had been kidnapped, others had been abandoned, left with no choice. And once inside, escape was nearly impossible. The brothel kept records of every debt fabric, food, rent for the smallest of rooms. A courtesan's earnings were supposed to repay her debt, but the balance was always just out of reach. Perfume, hairpins, silk gowns, all were charged at outrageous prices. The house always found a way to make the debt grow. A lifetime could be spent singing to strangers, pouring wine, waiting for the door to open to a man whose smile might be generous or cruel. As you sit in that dimly lit hall, your senses are overwhelmed. The music is hypnotic, the air thick and stifling. A plate of candied lotus seeds is set before you, their sweetness sticking to your teeth. The woman in green leans closer, her hair brushing your cheek, and whispers a story about a famous poet who once drank here, who left a poem carved into the wooden wall behind you. You glance back. The carving is there, half faded, words etched by a hand that has long turned to dust. For a moment, you almost forget where you are. You feel yourself drawn into her words, lulled by her voice. But then a shout cuts through the room. At a table across the hall, a drunken official has overturned his wine. His courtesan tries to soothe him, but he strikes her, hard, across the face. She crumples to the floor, silent, her painted cheek already swelling. The room falls into an uneasy hush. The official glares at the onlookers, daring anyone to intervene. No one does. Your stomach knots. You feel the bitter drink rising again, threatening to betray you. This is not the glamorous escape you imagined. This is something else entirely. Night deepens, the lanterns burn lower, the shadows grow longer, and the air thickens with smoke. Somewhere upstairs, a door slams. Somewhere else, you hear sobbing, quickly muffled. The woman in green pours you another drink, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "Do not look," she whispers. "Here, it is better to close your eyes." You obey. The music swells again, strings trembling like nerves under a blade. The taste of herbs lingers on your tongue. You feel the room spin, and for a moment, you wonder if you will make it through this night at all. And so begins our journey. 30 parts, 30 nights, 30 chapters into the forbidden world of the Lu-san of ancient China. A world both beautiful and brutal. A world where poetry and cruelty shared the same bed. And tonight, you are only at the threshold. The woman in green has not left your side. She sits with the practiced grace of someone who has repeated this ritual thousands of times, yet somehow makes it feel as though she is performing only for you. Her long sleeves ripple like silk banners as she lifts the cup to your lips once more. And though your body resists, you drink, because to refuse would be an insult. In this place, manners are currency, and a single misstep could cost you more than embarrassment. She introduces herself with a name that sounds like poetry, but you sense it isn't her true one. Names here are masks, chosen for their elegance, for their ability to suggest refinement, mystery, or luck. In some houses, courtesans are named after flowers: the graceful plum blossom, the fragrant peony, the fleeting cherry. In others, they take names from stars or famous beauties of the past. Their real names, the ones their mothers whispered to them as children, remain hidden, like a secret never to be shared. As you listen, you realize that the courtesan's smile is not just a smile. It is armor. It hides the exhaustion in her eyes, the calculation in her pauses, the careful balance between allure and caution. Every tilt of her head, every flutter of her lashes, every soft laugh is rehearsed. She knows exactly how long to let silence stretch, how to feign shyness, how to create the illusion that you are the most fascinating guest she has ever entertained. But behind her performance, you sense the weight of years. She has likely been here since she was 12 or 13, sold by a family that could not feed another mouth. From that day forward, she has belonged not to herself, but to the house. Every robe she wears, every hairpin she places in her hair, every bowl of rice she eats is added to her account. A debt ledger is kept with careful brushstrokes, and the numbers always seem to grow. The price of freedom is like a star reflected in a pond, beautiful, visible, but impossible to touch. She pours you more wine. "Drink," she says, smiling, "and I will tell you a story." The story begins with a scholar who came to the Lu Zen seeking inspiration for his poetry. He was lonely, weary of examinations and the endless pursuit of official favor. In the company of the courtesans, he found laughter and music, and for a night, he believed himself free. He spent his last coins on wine and silks, on poems written in delicate calligraphy, on whispered promises that would never be kept. By dawn, he was penniless. His family disowned him, ashamed of his debts. He lingered near the house, begging for scraps of rice, until eventually he too was swept inside, not as a guest, but as a servant, repaying his debts with labor until he vanished from the record. The woman in green sips from her cup and says, "That is how the house claims you, one way or another." Her voice is still gentle, but her eyes do not shine with amusement now. You shift uncomfortably on the woven mat. The music continues, soft and deliberate, but you can feel the tension in the room. Every man who enters believes he is in control, and every woman here knows better. The life of a courtesan was a paradox. On one hand, they were celebrated as artists. They could sing songs that made hardened officials weep, paint landscapes that nobles displayed in their halls, recite poetry that rivaled the great Tang. To masters, they were invited to banquets, to poetry contests, to private evenings where the wine flowed like rivers. On the other hand, they lived under constant surveillance. Every coin they earned went first to the madam. Every gift they received was recorded and often reclaimed. Their beauty was a commodity. Their talents were investments meant to draw in more guests. They lived where they worked, in rooms that were never truly their own. Some courtesans rose high. A few became companions to powerful officials, securing patronage that allowed them to leave the brothel and live in relative comfort. A rare handful even married into wealthy families. But for most, the story ended in silence, illness, poverty, or abandonment. The same walls that glowed with lantern light were also prisons, and the same songs that soothed weary travelers were sung night after night, until the voice that carried them was gone. The woman in green gestures for you to follow her. She leads you through a carved doorway into a corridor lit by a single lantern. The walls are hung with faded scrolls, their ink smudged by years of smoke. From behind closed doors, you hear muffled laughter and sometimes sobbing. At the end of the corridor is a small chamber, its floor covered with woven mats, its air heavy with incense. The woman closes the door behind you and kneels gracefully. She pours tea this time, the steam curling upward in ghostly tendrils. Now, she says softly, you must learn the rules. She begins to recite them, her voice low and steady, as though reading from memory. Do not speak without being spoken to. Your voice is a privilege, not a right. Do not touch without permission. What is not offered is forbidden. Do not ask about our lives outside these walls. The past is a dangerous ghost. Do not fall in love. Love has no place here. Above all, never forget everything has a price. She watches your face as she speaks, her eyes searching for any sign of rebellion. When you hesitate, she tilts her head. Do you understand? She asks. You nod, though inside, the weight of those rules presses down on you like stone. To survive the night, you must become a shadow of yourself. You must drink when told, laugh when prompted, and keep your questions locked inside. Outside, the night continues. The streets hum with footsteps, with laughter and whispers, with the sound of coins clinking into waiting hands. The city seems to breathe with the rhythm of its hidden houses, each one glowing faintly green in the darkness. But here, in this small chamber, the air feels still. The woman in green watches you, waiting for you to speak, or perhaps waiting for you to break. You realize suddenly that this is only the beginning. You have not yet seen the upper floors where the most expensive courtesans reside. You have not yet witnessed the games of power played between officials and merchants, between madams and their patrons, between women whose lives are measured in debts and fleeting favors. Already, your head is heavy, your limbs sluggish, your thoughts muddled by the bittersweet drink. The floor seems to tilt beneath you. The woman's voice, soft and measured, washes over you like a lullaby. And though every word is a warning, it lulls you deeper, as though she is weaving a spell. You close your eyes again, just for a moment. Outside, the flute continues its sad song. You feel the air brush against your cheek like silk. And in the shadows of the El Yushan, the night has only begun. The hours slip by in a haze. You are not sure if it is the wine, the incense, or the sheer weight of everything pressing in on you, but time feels strange here. The courtesan in green leaves you briefly, her sleeves whispering across the mat as she rises. For a moment, you are alone in the chamber, listening to the muffled sounds beyond the wall. Through the thin wood, you hear the rhythm of life in the house, a rhythm that has repeated itself for centuries. The El Yuzan is not just a place of pleasure, it is a machine, and every woman, every servant, every guest is a part of its gears. At dawn, long before you arrived, The courtesans woke. Their rooms are narrow, dim spaces, barely wide enough for a sleeping mat and a lacquered chest for clothing. Privacy does not exist here. Even behind the folding screens, the madam's ears are everywhere. The morning begins with silence. Each woman kneels before a small table where incense curls upward, praying to Guan Yin, the merciful goddess, for safety, for patience, for survival. Some pray for freedom, others no longer bother. After prayers, the rituals of beauty begin. The air fills with the scent of powders and perfumes. A thin layer of rice powder is brushed onto cheeks until the skin glows like porcelain. Eyebrows are carefully drawn, lips painted in the shape of plum blossoms. Hair is coiled into elaborate knots, adorned with pins of jade, silver, or sometimes mere tin painted to shine like gold. The process is endless. Hours are spent preparing for a single night. The gowns are chosen carefully, not too plain, not too lavish. Each one meant to signal something to the guests. Purity, refinement, mystery, allure. By midday, lessons begin. A courtesan must always sharpen her skills. Some practice calligraphy, their brushes moving across silk scrolls with precise elegance. Others rehearse poetry, memorizing verses from Li Bai or Du Fu, ready to recite them in soft tones that will make even the hardest official sigh. Still others pluck at zithers and peepers, their fingers calloused, their wrists aching, because perfection is the expectation. Every note, every line, every glance is part of the performance. By evening, the house comes alive. Servants rush about lighting lanterns, sweeping floors, carrying jars of wine that glisten with condensation. The madam inspects each room, her eyes sharp as knives, ensuring no detail is out of place. A crooked hairpin, a smudge in the paint on a lip, a robe stained by careless hands, these are punishable offenses. For the courtesans, the evening is a test of endurance. They must smile, sing, pour wine, listen to endless speeches, laugh at jokes that are not funny. They must be graceful when their hearts are heavy, patient when guests are cruel, entertaining when exhaustion claws at their bones. And all of it must appear effortless. The woman in green returns carrying a tray of fruit, lychees, peeled so their flesh glistens, dried plums, sweet and sour at once. She sets them before you, and the scent rises, sharp and sticky. You look tired, she says, softly, as though the thought has just occurred to her. But her eyes know better. She knows you are unraveling. That is what this house does. It pulls at the threads of who you are until you are no longer certain what is real. She tells you more of her daily life, though whether she is confessing or merely weaving another story, you cannot say. In the mornings, she practices poetry. In the afternoons, she sings for no one, her voice echoing in empty halls. At night, she dons the robe of green, the paint of vermilion, the mask of a woman who belongs to the shadows. Sometimes, she says, she dreams of another life, of fields of rice bending in the wind, of a mother's hand brushing hair from her face. She dreams of freedom, though she does not say the word aloud. Words here can be dangerous. As she speaks, you notice the servants moving through the corridor outside. Boys no older than 12, carrying trays with trembling hands. Girls, perhaps, once sold into the house, but too young still to be courtesans, scrubbing floors, fetching water. Their eyes are empty, their movements mechanical. For them, the cycle has already begun. The madam passes by, her footsteps heavy, her robe of dark silk embroidered with cranes and clouds. Her gaze flicks toward your chamber door, then away. She does not need to look to know what is happening inside. Nothing escapes her. Every coin, every word, every gesture flows back to her in the end. This is the unspoken truth of the Lu San. You think you have come here freely, but once inside, the house owns you. Whether guest or courtesan, servant or scholar, the house takes something you cannot get back. The woman in green reaches across the table and plucks a lychee, its juice running down her fingers. She offers it to you. Her hand is steady, but her eyes are tired. Eat, she says. It will help. You bite into the fruit, and the sweetness bursts across your tongue. But beneath the sugar, there is a bitterness you cannot name. She smiles again, that practiced, perfect smile. And you realize that even the small act sharing fruit, pouring wine, reciting poetry is part of the performance. Every gesture has meaning. Every word is measured. You feel suddenly heavy, as though the air itself is pressing you down. The incense is thicker now, or perhaps your senses are failing. You glance at the lantern on the wall. The flame flickers, then steadies, casting long shadows that dance across the painted screen. Somewhere above, footsteps creak across the wooden floor. A door opens, then closes. A woman's laughter rings out, followed by silence. You look back at the woman in green. She is watching you carefully, her head tilted ever so slightly. For a moment, you think you see a crack in her mask, a glimpse of something raw, unguarded. But then it is gone, replaced by the same practiced elegance. Do not be fooled, she says quietly. What you see here is not real. The music, the laughter, even the smiles, they are all illusions. We live inside a dream, and the dream belongs to the house. Her words sink into you like stones. You feel your stomach twist. The fruit tastes sour now. The wine burns in your veins. And you know, with a sudden clarity, that she is right. Night continues its slow descent. The hall grows louder. Voices rise and fall. Laughter crashes like waves. Songs bleed into one another. But here, in this chamber, the stillness is suffocating. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you imagine the dawn, the grey light creeping over tiled roofs, the street cleaners sweeping away the ashes of lanterns, the courtesans returning to their narrow rooms to collapse in exhaustion. But dawn is far away. For now, there's only the night, only the endless rituals, only the smile of a woman who knows the rules too well. And as you sit there, lost in the labyrinth of her words, you begin to wonder if you will survive even this single night. The woman in green leaves again, slipping through the door with a rustle of silk. You are left in the dim chamber, your thoughts circling like moths around a lantern flame. You think you hear music change in the main hall, shifting from the delicate strings of the pipa to the deeper resonance of a guqin. The notes slide like water over stone, slow and deliberate, designed not to stir excitement, but to cradle it, to build anticipation. The door slides open, and the air in the room shifts. A figure enters different this time, heavier, slower, wrapped in robes of dark satin that brush the floor with every step. Her hair is coiled into a bun so tight it gleams under the lantern light, and her face, though painted, does not smile. This is the madam. Her presence fills the space like smoke. You do not need to be told who she is. The air tells you, the way the servants stiffen when she passes, the way even the courtesans lower their eyes in her presence. In the Luosan, she is both queen and warden. She does not sit. She stands over you, studying your face with the sharp gaze of someone who has spent a lifetime measuring men. In an instant, She knows what you carry. How much coin jingles in your pouch. How much pride weighs on your shoulders. How much weakness trembles behind your eyes. You are new, she says finally, her voice low, like the scraping of stone. New to this place. Do you understand where you are? You nod, though the truth is, you do not. The madam controls everything. The flow of wine, the pacing of music, the rise and fall of laughter. She is the conductor of an invisible orchestra. And every guest, every courtesan, every servant moves according to her silent command. It is she who decides which woman will pour your drink, which song will fill the air, which story will be whispered at your ear. It is she who ensures that your coin leaves your purse as easily as breath leaves your lungs. The economy of the El Yusani is invisible yet relentless. You pay not just for wine, but for the way it is poured. Not just for music, but for the glance exchanged between notes. Every smile, every bow, every brush of silk carries a price. You think you are spending coins. In truth, you are bleeding them. The madam keeps the ledger. By candlelight, her brush glides across scrolls, marking each expense in careful strokes. Wine, robe, hairpin, candle. Song, all of it recorded. For the courtesans, the ledger is a chain. For the guests, it is a net. Once you are caught, it is almost impossible to escape. The woman in green returns, bowing deeply before the madam. The transformation is striking. A moment ago, she was graceful, confident, her smile controlled. Now, in the presence of her superior, she seems smaller, subdued, as if her very body has learned obedience. The madam does not return the bow. She does not need to. She lifts her hand, and the woman in green kneels beside you, silent. The madam's gaze lingers on you once more. Enjoy yourself, she says, though her tone makes it sound less like an invitation and more like a command. Then she turns and leaves, her robes sweeping behind her like a tide receding. When the door closes, the woman in green exhales softly, as though she has been holding her breath. She sees everything, she whispers. Everything. She tells you stories of the madam not in detail, never in names but in fragments, like shadows cast on a wall. How one courtesan tried to hide a gift from a patrona jade hairpin, slipped into her sleeve. The madam found out by nightfall. The girl's hair was cut as punishment, her beauty shorn away, her debt doubled. How a guest once insulted the house, refusing to pay for the wine he drank. The madam's men followed him into the street. By morning, his purse was gone, his dignity stripped, his reputation ruined. How, when famine struck the countryside, desperate parents came knocking at the door, offering their daughters in exchange for rice. The madam accepted, her face expressionless, her ledger swelling with new names. The woman's voice lowers. Some say the madam was once like us, a courtesan, sold when she was young. They say she rose higher, learned faster, until she no longer belonged to anyone but herself. Now she owns us all. You imagine the young girl she once was, powdered cheeks, trembling hands plucking at strings, eyes darting towards the door in hope and fear. And then you see her now, cloaked in silk, her gaze sharp enough to cut through lies, her power absolute. It is a transformation born not of freedom, but of necessity. In a house where men consume women like wine, only one woman consumes the men. The night deepens. The music grows louder in the hall, laughter spilling through the corridors. The woman in green pours you another drink, her hands steady once more, but her words cling to you like smoke. The madam is everywhere, in the clink of coins, in the hush that falls when she enters, in the silence after she leaves. She is the shadow that lingers even in the brightest lantern light. You begin to understand that surviving a night here is not just about enduring the wine, the perfume, the endless rituals. It is about learning to navigate her gaze, to avoid drawing her displeasure, to give enough, spend enough, submit enough, that you do not become a problem she needs to solve. Because problems do not last long in the Lu San. The woman in green lifts her cup and touches it to yours. To survival, she says softly. You drink, though the taste now feels heavier, bitterer. Your thoughts blur at the edges. You wonder how many before you have sat here, raising cups to survival, only to vanish into the ledger's endless columns. The lantern flickers. The music swells. Somewhere, the madam's brush glides across parchment, recording another transaction, another debt, another night swallowed by the house. And you realize, with a chill that settles deep into your bones, that you are already part of her book. The cup is empty again. The taste of wine lingers on your tongue, sharp and sweet. But it is the madam's shadow that lingers heavier in your mind. You think back to her words now, not even words, just the weight of her presence, and realize that every step you take from here is under her silent watch. But the night does not pause for reflection. It never does in the Lu San. As soon as the madam departs, life surges back like a river released from a dam. Music swells in the main hall. Voices rise in laughter, and attendants hurry to replenish trays of fruit and wine. The house must always flow forward, never stagnant, always alive, because stillness is when the illusions falter. The woman in green touches your sleeve lightly. It is time, she says. And though you do not know for what, you follow her back through the carved doorway into the hall. The transformation stuns you, where before the hall seemed heavy with smoke and unease. Now it bursts with color and sound. Lanterns have been replaced, burning brighter. Musicians on the platform strike bolder notes, the plucked strings of the peeper darting like fireflies, the deep drum thrumming like a heartbeat. In the center of the room, courtesans move gracefully in pairs. Their long sleeves trail the floor as they spin, their silk gowns shimmering like pools of water under the flickering light. Their faces are serene, almost mask-like, but their eyes gleam with practiced intent. This is no careless dance. It is an invitation, a performance designed to draw men deeper into the dream. Guests clap along, some drunkenly off-beat, others with restrained admiration. Officials stroke their beards, pretending they are judging art when their eyes betray their hunger. Merchants laugh too loudly, eager to show they belong among men of higher rank. The hall hums with layers of performance. The courtesans' dances, the guest disguises, the servants' silent labor. Everyone wears a mask, and you too must learn yours if you are to survive. The woman in green leads you to a low table, surrounded by other guests. A game is already underway. To who? The ancient pastime of casting arrows into a bronze vessel. The vessel gleams in the lamplight, its surface etched with dragons curling around clouds. The arrows are light, made of bamboo, and the players take turns tossing them with exaggerated flair. Each miss is met with laughter, each success with applause. It seems innocent at first, even playful, but you quickly sense the stakes beneath the smiles. Wagers are whispered, cups of wine exchanged, debts recorded silently by watching attendants. A man who wins too often earns admiration, but also envy. A man who loses too often finds his purse lighter, his pride in tatters. The woman in green hands you an arrow. Her fingers brush yours, her touch deliberate. Play, she murmurs. Your first throw clatters against the rim and falls to the floor. The table erupts in laughter, not cruel, but pointed. Already, you feel the room tightening around you. Already you sense how quickly entertainment can turn to humiliation here. You try again. The arrow slips neatly into the vessel. Applause rises, and wine is poured into your cup. The courtesan beside you smiles, her expression perfectly timed, perfectly measured. It is a reminder, even games here are masks. Behind laughter is calculation, behind applause, expectation. The musicians shift again, the tempo slower now. Courtesans take their seats beside favoured guests, presenting brushes, scrolls, and inkstones. It is time for poetry. One scholar, his beard thin and wispy, recites verses about the moon reflecting on river water. His words are elegant, though rehearsed, and the courtesan at his side praises him with delicate nods. Another man composes a clumsy couplet about wine, drawing laughter from the table. His courtesan laughs with him, though her eyes are already drifting elsewhere. When it is your turn, the woman in green presses a brush into your hand. The ink is dark, glistening, its scent sharp. She leans close, her voice soft in your ear. Do not worry about beauty. Write something true. Your hand trembles. The brush scratches across silk, forming uneven lines. You write of the lanterns outside, of the way shadows cling to corners, of the unease that sits heavy in your chest. The characters are crooked, imperfect, but when you finish, the woman in green nods, as though you have spoken a secret meant only for her. She presents your verse to the table. Some laugh, some shrug. But she looks at you with a smile that feels, for the briefest moment, unpracticed, real. The night deepens, and still the performances continue. Courtesans sing songs of lost love, their voices trembling like reeds in the wind. They play drinking games where a missed answer means another cup, another stumble toward oblivion. They tell riddles and proverbs, weaving wisdom into laughter, keeping men caught in the illusion of both delight and enlightenment. And all the while, the madam's shadow lingers. Though she is not here, you feel her presence in every game, every song, every gesture. She is the invisible hand ensuring the guests spend freely, ensuring the courtesans never falter, ensuring the illusion never breaks. The woman in green refills your cup once more. Her sleeve brushes your hand, her perfume a cloud of jasmine and plum. You are holding on well, she says softly, though her eyes betray a question. Because the truth is, you are not. Your head is heavy, your limbs sluggish. The laughter around you blurs, the music turns dizzying. You feel the weight of coins slipping from your pouch, the heat of wine in your veins, the pressure of 100 gazes measuring you. And you realize this is how the house consumes you, not with force, but with performance, not with chains, but with masks. You are drawn in little by little, until you no longer know where the game ends and the truth begins. The musicians bow, the dancers retreat. The games dissolve into quieter conversations, into whispers and sidelong glances. The night is not over, but it is changing shape, moving into deeper, more dangerous currents. The woman in green leans close, her lips near your ear. The performances are done, she murmurs. Now you will see the truth. Her words send a shiver down your spine. The hall seems darker now, though the lanterns still glow. The laughter softer, though no less sharp. Behind every smile, you sense the weight of hunger, behind every bow, the pull of debt. And you know, as the night turns, that you are being led further into the labyrinth of the El Yutshan. The laughter fades, and the music softens to a single flute, its notes winding through the air like smoke. The woman in green rises, her expression composed, though her eyes betray something sharper, anticipation, or perhaps warning. She gestures for you to follow, and once more you leave the main hall behind. The corridors are quieter now. The lanterns burn lower, their light dim and flickering, casting shadows that stretch across painted walls. You notice, for the first time, how narrow the passages are, how easily sound travels through the paper screens. Behind one door, you hear the steady hum of conversation. Behind another, the muffled sob of someone trying not to be heard. "This way," the woman whispers, her voice barely louder than the creak of the floorboards. She leads you to a chamber at the far end of the house. It is smaller than the hall, but more intimate. A low table sits in the center, surrounded by cushions. A brazier glows faintly in the corner, filling the room with the scent of sandalwood. The walls are lined with silk screens, painted with images of mountains and rivers, cranes gliding across clouds. But when you look closer, you see the paint has faded, chipped in places, revealing the wood beneath. It is an illusion, like everything else here. The woman pours you tea this time, not wine. The steam curls upward, warming your face, and for a moment you think you can breathe again. But then she lowers her voice, and the weight of her words pulls you back under. "You've seen the performances," she says. "The masks, the laughter, the games, the songs. But behind the screens, the truth is different. Do you wish to see it?" You hesitate, but she does not wait for your answer. She rises, slides one of the silk screens aside, and beckons you through. The passage beyond is dark, narrow, and colder. You follow her footsteps carefully, the boards creaking beneath you. The sound of music from the hall fades with every step, replaced by silence, broken only by the distant drip of water. At the end of the corridor, she stops before a small door. She slides it open, and you are hit by a wave of air stale, damp, heavy with the smell of sweat and something metallic beneath. Inside, the illusion is gone. The chamber is bare, the walls cracked, the floor littered with worn bedding. A single lantern burns dimly, its light barely reaching the corners. In the shadows, women lie on mats, their faces pale, their eyes closed. Some stir weakly, coughing into their sleeves. Others do not move at all. These are the ones the guests do not see. The woman in green says quietly, "The sick, the broken, the ones who could no longer keep the mask." Your stomach tightens. You take a step back, but the door has already slid shut behind you. She walks slowly between the mats, her sleeves brushing the floor. When a courtesan falls ill, when her beauty fades, when her songs no longer bring coin, this is where she comes. Not to be cared for, not to be healed, but to disappear. To wait until her debt is erased, not by payment, but by death. You cannot speak. The sight is too heavy, too raw. The women on the mats do not look at you. Some do not seem to notice you are even there. Their gazes are fixed on the ceiling, or on memories only they can see. The woman in green kneels beside one of them, a girl who cannot be older than 16. She wipes her brow with a damp cloth, murmuring words you cannot hear. The girl stirs weakly, her lips moving soundlessly. The courtesan looks back at you, her eyes sharp now, stripped of the softness she showed in the hall. "This is the truth," she says. The dream is for the guests. The mask is for survival. But beneath it all, this is where we end. You feel the air press down on you, heavier than the incense, heavier than the wine. Your body aches to leave, to return to the hall, to the music and laughter, even knowing they are lies. But your feet do not move. You are rooted in place, forced to witness what lies beyond the screen. The woman in green rises. Come. There is more to see. She leads you out, back into the narrow corridor. The door slides shut behind you, and once again the silence wraps around you. You walk on, deeper into the hidden passages of the house. The next door she opens reveals a storeroom. Shelves stacked with jars of wine, boxes of silk robes, trays of powders and paints. At first, it seems ordinary, but then you notice the ledgers. Stacks of them, tied neatly with twine. The ink on the top scroll is fresh, the brushstrokes crisp. The woman gestures toward them. Every coin spent, every robe worn, every candle burned, every hairpin broken. It is all written here. A courtesan's debt is not measured in years, it is measured in ink. You run your eyes along the shelves, the endless rows of records, each one a life reduced to numbers, each one a chain no less binding than iron. This, she says softly, is why no one leaves. You stumble back into the chamber where the tea still steams, though it has grown cold. Your mind spins. The masks, the laughter, the games, they were heavy enough. But this truth, hidden behind the silk screens, is heavier still. The woman in green sits opposite you once more, her face calm, though her eyes betray the faintest tremor. You wished to survive the night, she says. Then you must remember what you have seen. The house will always show you what it wants you to believe. But behind the screens, the truth waits. Her words linger as the flute in the hall fades into silence. A bell sounds faintly, marking the turn of the night. The performances are over. The illusions are fading. What remains now is something raw, sharper, far more dangerous. And you know, as you sit in that dim chamber, with the taste of bitter tea on your tongue, that the night has only just begun to show its teeth. The bell's echo fades into the wooden beams above you, a hollow reminder that the night is not endless, though it often feels so. You sit in silence, the woman in green watching you as though weighing whether you are still worth the effort. Then she rises, smoothing the folds of her robe, and gestures for you to follow once more. Back through the corridors you go, the painted screens whispering as you pass. The air is thicker now, the incense almost cloying, as though the house itself is sweating under the weight of its illusions. When you return to the main hall, the transformation is startling. Where once the room was filled with elegant songs, poetry, graceful dance, now it trembles under a different rhythm. The music is harsher, the drum louder, the laughter sharper. Wine jars are tipped and refilled too quickly, spilling across mats. The courtesans still smile, but their movements are slower, their masks harder to hold. The night has gone deep enough that even the strongest masks begin to slip. At a corner table, a merchant shouts too loudly at the courtesan beside him, accusing her of cheating him in a drinking game. His face is red, his words slurred. The woman bows, apologizing again and again, but the apology only fuels his anger. He raises his hand as though to strike her. Before he can, 2 attendants appear. They are silent, efficient, their hands firm as they guide him away from the table. They do not speak, but their presence is enough. The merchant stumbles, cursing, but he does not strike. Within moments, he is gone, swallowed by another chamber, perhaps to sleep off his rage, or perhaps to learn the consequences of forgetting himself in the madam's house. The courtesan remains, her smile trembling at the edges. She bows once more, then withdraws into the shadows. The woman in green leans close to you. "This is the most dangerous hour," she murmurs. "The hour when masks weaken, when wine loosens tongues, when men forget they are guests." You look around and see what she means. The officials who carried themselves with dignity earlier now sprawl across cushions, their robes stained with spilled wine. The scholars who spoke with such grace now argue loudly, their voices thick with drink. Even the courtesans falter, their laughter too brittle, their smiles too wide. It is in this hour that secrets slip through lips, promises are made too freely, insults are spoken too harshly, hands reach too boldly, and when the balance tips, the consequences are swift. The woman in green guides you to another table, where a group of men play a game of riddles. They glance at you with bleary eyes, inviting you with gestures to join. The rules are simple. Answer the riddle or drink. The first riddle is about a dragon and a pearl, and one man answers with a bawdy joke that sends the table into laughter. The next is about a fishman and a net, and another man stumbles through a verse, earning applause. Then it is your turn. The riddle is simple, but your mind is heavy with wine and smoke. You falter. The table erupts in laughter, and the woman in green quickly places a cup in your hand. "Drink," she says, her smile soft, but her eyes urgent. You obey, though the liquid scorches your throat and makes your head spin even faster. The laughter fades into murmurs, the murmurs into whispers. You catch fragments words about debts, about officials, about secrets that should not be spoken here. The courtesans laugh, trying to drown the whispers, but the tension coils tighter. A commotion breaks out near the entrance. A guest has collapsed. Too much wine, too little sense. Attendants rush to lift him, carrying him out like a bundle of cloth. The madam appears briefly, her face calm but her eyes sharp, scanning the room. With a single glance, she restores order. The music shifts again, softer now, an attempt to soothe the rising storm. But the cracks are there. You can feel them. The woman in green guides you away from the table, back toward the quieter edges of the hall. "You see," she whispers, "the house survives on illusion, but illusion cannot hold forever. And when it breaks, it is the courtesans who suffer first." Her words settle like ash. You glance at the courtesans still moving among the guests, their smiles stretched thin, their laughter too loud. You see the tremor in their hands as they pour wine, the stiffness in their backs as they endure drunken jests. The performance continues, but beneath it, you sense exhaustion, fear, and despair. You return to the smaller chamber, the tea still waiting. The woman sits opposite you, folding her hands in her lap. For the first time tonight, she looks directly into your eyes, her mask lowered just enough for you to see the weariness there. "This is why you would not survive," she says softly, "because the house is not built for survival, not for the guests, not for the women, not even for the madam. It is built for consumption. It devours beauty, devours coin, devours dignity, and in the end, it devours you." Her words hang in the silence, heavier than the wine, heavier than the smoke. Outside, the music falters. A lantern sputters, its flame shrinking to an ember. The night is wearing thin, and with it, the masks. And you know, with a chill that seeps into your bones, that dawn will not bring release. Dawn will only reveal how much of yourself the house has already taken. The lantern flames quiver, their glow casting long, restless shadows across the hall. The hour is late, but the night refuses to surrender. The laughter has quieted to murmurs, the music to a single zither note, plucked over and over like a heartbeat. The air feels heavier, pressed down by smoke, perfume, and the weight of secrets beginning to slip free. The woman in green sits close beside you, her sleeve brushing your arm, her voice no louder than a sigh. This is the hour of whispers, she says, when men loosen their tongues and forget who is listening. You tilt your head, straining to hear. At a table nearby, two officials lean close over a scroll. Their voices are hushed, but the words drift like embers in the smoky air. Names of provinces, mentions of taxes, rumors of uprisings. Their courtesans pour wine delicately, pretending not to listen, though their ears catch every syllable. At another table, a merchant brags too loudly about shipments of silk and tea, about bribes paid to inspectors, about the coins hidden from the emperor's tax collectors. His courtesan laughs on cue, her painted lips curved like a crescent moon, but her eyes flick briefly toward the madam's attendants, lingering in the shadows. The El Yuzan is more than a house of pleasure. It is a stage where politics and business perform in the half-light. Here, alliances are made and broken, bribes whispered, plots planted like seeds in the soil of wine and song. The courtesans are not merely performers, they are witnesses. Their smiles hide sharp memories, their laughter conceals words they will later carry to the madam, and the madam, with her ledgers and her silence, knows more than any magistrate or minister could dream. The woman in green lowers her gaze. Every night, men think they are safe here, that their words vanish with the smoke. But nothing vanishes in the house. The walls remember, the women remember, the madam remembers. She leans closer, so close you can feel her breath against your ear. This is why the house survives, not just because of beauty or song, but because secrets are worth more than coin. And here, secrets are gathered like pearls. You glance again at the officials. One of them laughs suddenly, a harsh bark that cuts through the quiet. His hand slams against the table, scattering cups. His courtesan steadies the wine jar, her face calm, though her knuckles whiten. She murmurs something in his ear, and his laughter softens, turns back into a murmur. It is a performance within a performance. The courtesan's role is not just to entertain, but to keep the balance, to ensure whispers do not become shouts, that secrets are spoken, but not exposed too loudly. The woman in green rises. "Come," she says. "You should see how the house listens." She leads you again through the corridors, past painted screens and flickering lanterns. This time, she stops at a small alcove hidden behind a carved lattice wall. Through the narrow slits, you can see into the hall. The officials still murmur, the merchant still brags, the courtesans still laugh. But from here, unseen, the house listens. A young servant sits beside the lattice, brush in hand, scroll unrolled across his lap. He writes quickly, silently, recording words as they slip from careless lips. You realize, with a chill, that every secret spoken here is captured, inked onto parchment, stored somewhere in the madam's vault of ledgers and scrolls. The woman in green watches you carefully. Now you understand. The house is not just a place for pleasure. It is a web. Every word, every coin, every gesture it is all caught, all remembered. That is why no man truly leaves when he walks out the door. Part of him remains here, bound in ink and silence. You step back from the lattice, your stomach turning. The house is no longer just a place of wine and song, nor even of debts and despair. It is something larger, more insidious, a place where power is traded as quietly as flesh, where the illusion of secrecy hides a truth sharper than any blade. The woman in green places a hand on your arm. Her touch is steady, but her eyes betray a flicker of warning. "Be careful," she says. "You've seen too much already." Back in the hall, the atmosphere has shifted again. The officials have departed, escorted by attendants. The merchant slumps over his cup, his courtesan guiding his hand gently to keep him from spilling more. The music fades into silence, leaving only the occasional cough, the clink of a jar being set down, the sigh of someone too tired to keep the mask in place. The woman in green guides you once more to the smaller chamber. She pours tea, her movements precise despite the hour. "The night is long," she says softly, "and it grows heavier the closer we come to dawn. If you wish to survive, you must learn, not just to see, but to listen." Her words echo in your mind as you sip the bitter tea. Outside, the last of the wine jars are emptied, the last of the songs sung. Whispers fade into silence, but you know they are not gone. They are written somewhere, waiting, part of the house now forever. The lanterns flicker lower, the air grows colder. The woman in green folds her hands, her face unreadable once more. And you know, with a sinking certainty, that dawn will not save you. Dawn will only reveal more of what the night has hidden. The tea is bitter, the kind that clears the haze of wine, but leaves the tongue dry and the chest heavy. You sip it slowly, the woman in green watching in silence, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Beyond the chamber, the house grows quieter. The laughter has thinned, the music fallen silent. The hour of whispers has passed, and now the night moves toward its final act. A faint chill seeps in through the cracks of the wooden walls. The lanterns sputter, their oil nearly spent, their glow pale and uncertain. The air carries a new weight, not of perfume or smoke, but of exhaustion, the weariness of bodies that have been stretched too far, voices that have sung too long, faces that have smiled too widely. The woman in green rises gracefully, though her shoulders slope with fatigue. "Come," she says, her voice softer now. "You should see what the house looks like when the masks are finally put away." She leads you back through the corridors. The painted screens still hang, but in the dim light, their colors seem faded. Their flowers and cranes no longer radiant but ghostly. Servants move silently, gathering empty jars, sweeping crumbs from mats, wiping spilled wine from lacquered tables. Their eyes are blank, their movements mechanical, as though their bodies continue out of habit, long after their spirits have gone to rest. The main hall is almost unrecognizable. Where hours ago it pulsed with music and laughter, now it feels like the aftermath of a storm. Mats are askew, cushions overturned, silk robes left crumpled on the floor. The air reeks of stale wine and sweat. A guest lies snoring against a pillar, his courtesan gone, his purse likely lightened beyond repair. The courtesans who remain move like shadows, their robes trailing, their faces still painted, though the paint is smudged with fatigue. Their voices are low, murmuring final goodbyes, soothing guests towards the door, offering last cups of watered-down wine. It is the unraveling hour, the time when illusion frays and reality bleeds through. The woman in green guides you up a narrow staircase. The wood creaks under your weight, the air colder here, carrying the faint scent of rain from the world outside. At the top is a row of small rooms, each one divided by thin walls, each with a sliding door painted with faint, faded designs. She slides one open. Inside is a space barely large enough for a sleeping mat and a chest. A single candle flickers on a low table, illuminating a robe folded neatly, a brush resting on its side, a bowl of cold rice left untouched. This is not the chamber of a hostess, nor the room of a guest. It is the cell of a woman who belongs to the house. "This is where we end our nights," the woman in green says quietly. "When the lanterns go out and the masks are put away, this is what remains." She kneels and smooths the mat with her hands. Her robe pools around her like a shadow, her movements slow, deliberate. Some of us write poems, though few will ever be read. Some hum the songs we sang in the hall, though no one listens. Most simply sleep, if we can. And in the morning, it begins again. You glance down the corridor. Other doors slide open and close, revealing similar rooms. Courtesans slip inside, their laughter fading as they bow their heads, their painted faces now masks of weariness. Some speak softly to one another, trading whispers of comfort, small fragments of humanity in the dark. Others remain silent, too tired to form words. The house, which only hours ago felt alive with light and sound, now feels more like a tomb. Its silence is thick, its walls heavy with the weight of 1,000 nights just like this one. The woman in green lowers herself onto the mat. She looks at you with eyes that are softer now, stripped of performance. "Do you understand?" she asks. You nod. Though the truth is, your understanding is incomplete. You see the exhaustion, the endless cycle, the faces that smile for survival and collapse in solitude. But you cannot feel the weight as she does, the years of debt, the burden of performance, the steady erosion of hope. Still, you understand enough to know this. The illusion is gone. The dream has ended. What remains is only survival. A bell tolls faintly in the distance. Dawn is not yet here, but the night has begun its slow retreat. The servants move through the corridors, extinguishing lanterns one by one. With each flame that dies, the shadows grow deeper, the silence thicker. The woman in green leans back against the wall. Her head tilts slightly, her hairpins glinting faintly in the last of the candlelight. When the sun rises, the guests will return to their lives. They will boast of the wine they drank, the songs they heard, the women they touched. They will remember the dream, not the truth. She closes her eyes, and we will remain here, waiting to begin again. The candle flickers lower. You feel the chill of the dawn pressing closer, though the sky outside is still dark. The exhaustion of the house seeps into your bones, into your very breath. You are not a courtesan, not bound by debt or duty, yet even you feel the trap tightening. And in that moment, you understand why you would not survive. It is not just the wine, the masks, the debts, or the secrets. It is the endlessness, the cycle that grinds night into day, day into night, until all meaning is stripped away. You exhale slowly. The woman in green exhales with you, and for the first time tonight, you feel you are breathing the same air. The lantern outside sputters, then dies. Darkness folds over the corridor. Only silence remains. Darkness lingers in the corridor, thick and pressing. Yet beneath it, faintly, you sense a shift. The house exhales, as if releasing the breath it has been holding all night. The rustle of silk grows quieter. The last notes of laughter vanish into silence. And somewhere beyond the walls, the world itself begins to stir. The woman in green opens her eyes. Her painted face looks softer now, blurred by fatigue, her carefully drawn brows slightly smudged. "It is almost morning," she says, her voice heavy. "Come. You must see what happens when the night finally ends." She leads you down the narrow staircase once more. The main hall lies in ruin, not from violence, but from indulgence. Mats lie crumpled, cushions stained, the air heavy with the sour tang of wine. Lanterns sputter, their flames shrunken to dying embers. A handful of guests remain, sprawled like broken puppets across the floor. One mutters incoherently in his sleep, his hand clutching a coin purse that is already half empty. Another stumbles toward the door, his robe dragging, his hair disheveled, his eyes dull. Courtesans guide them gently, their smiles practiced even in exhaustion, their hands steady as they steer men too weak to walk. The illusion of refinement, of poetry and grace has dissolved. What remains is raw, bare, unpolished. The woman in green whispers, "This is the hour the house fears most, when the dream is over, but the truth cannot yet be hidden." You follow her to the threshold where the heavy doors creak open. Outside, the sky is a pale grey, the first hint of dawn bleeding across the tiled rooftops. The street is almost empty, save for a few vendors setting up their stalls, sweeping away the debris of yesterday. The smell of steamed buns and boiling soy fills the air, a sharp contrast to the perfume and incense that still cling to your clothes. A guest stumbles past you, shielding his eyes from the light. In the darkness of the house, he was bold, laughing, powerful. In the dawn, he looks small, his robe torn, his steps uncertain. The courtesan who guided him out slips back inside without a word, her face once more hidden by shadow. You realize, with a chill, that this is part of the illusion too. The night exists to dazzle, to consume. The dawn exists to erase, to scatter the guests back into the world before they can see too clearly what they have lost. The woman in green watches the departing figures with unreadable eyes. By midday, she says softly, they will remember only fragments, a song, a smile, a taste of wine, enough to bring them back, but not enough to let them see the truth. She looks at you then, her gaze sharp despite her weariness. Do you understand now? This is why you would not survive a night here. Because survival is not just about making it through the wine, the games, the whispers. It is about enduring the dawn, about facing what remains when the dream is stripped away. Her words sink into you as you watch another guest stagger into the street. His purse is gone, his dignity too. Yet you know he will return. Drawn back by the memory of the mask, by the dream carefully woven for him. The house consumes not in one night, but in many, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but a name in the ledger, a whisper in the hall, a story told in passing. The woman in green turns back toward the hall. Come, she says. It is time to see the courtesans after the guests are gone. You follow her through the dim corridors. The house is quieter now, but not silent. Doors slide open and close. Voices murmur. Water splashes in basins. Courtesans wash away their paint. Their pale faces stripped bare, their lips no longer painted into blossoms. Without the mask, they look younger, more fragile. Some hum softly as they comb their hair. Others sit silently, staring at their hands as though they no longer recognize them. The transformation is startling. These are not the women who danced with sleeves like flowing rivers. who sang songs of longing beneath lantern light. These are women with hollow eyes, with shoulders bowed under invisible weights, with hands calloused from strings and brushes. The woman in green does not look away. She watches them with a mixture of tenderness and sorrow, as though she too sees the cracks that no paint can cover. This, she says quietly, is the truest face of the house. Not the music, not the laughter, not the games. This. You feel the truth of her words in your chest. The illusion has crumbled. The house is no longer a stage, but a cage. The courtesans are no longer performers, but survivors. And yet, even now, you know the masks will return with the next sunset. The paint will be reapplied, the robes donned, the songs rehearsed. The cycle will begin again, as endless as the turning of the seasons. You close your eyes. The sound of water, the murmur of voices, the faint hum of an old song fills your ears. You think of the guests, now scattered across the waking city, carrying fragments of the dream. You think of the ledgers, stacked high with debts that will never be paid. You think of the sick room behind the screen, where women lie waiting to vanish. And you know, with a sinking certainty, that the house will outlast them all. The woman in green pours the last of the tea. It is cold now, bitter on your tongue. She does not smile as you drink, nor does she offer comfort. She only sits in silence, her eyes fixed on the fading lantern flame. When it dies, the chamber falls into shadow, and with it, the night is over. The candle dies, but the house does not sleep. Dawn spills across the city, painting tiled roofs with pale light, and still the Lusan stirs with quiet motion. Courtesans retreat into their narrow chambers. Servants sweep away the remains of wine and fruit. Attendants scrub the stains from lacquered tables. The night is gone, but the cycle continues. The woman in green stands slowly, her robe dragging along the floor. Her voice is hoarse, the softness stripped away by fatigue. The night belongs to masks, she says, but the day belongs to the ledger. You follow her down another staircase, this one narrower, darker, leading to the underbelly of the house. The air here is cool and dry, carrying the scent of ink and old parchment. Lanterns burn low in iron cages, their glow faint but steady. At the bottom is a wide chamber lined with shelves. Scrolls and ledgers stretch from floor to ceiling, their bindings frayed with use, the edges smudged with fingerprints. A long table sits in the center, its surface covered in brushes, inkstones, and stacks of fresh parchment. Seated at the table is the madam. Her hair is pinned neatly, her robe dark and unadorned, her face bare of the paint she wore in the night. Without the mask of cosmetics, she looks older, but no less formidable. The lines around her eyes are etched deep, her gaze sharp even in weariness. She does not glance up as you enter. Her brush glides steadily across the parchment, strokes crisp and deliberate. Each mark is a name, a debt, a number. The woman in green bows deeply, then kneels at the table's edge. You follow her lead, though your knees ache against the cold floor. The madam's voice cuts through the silence like a blade. The night consumes. The day remembers. She sets her brush aside, lifts a scroll from the pile, and unrolls it. The ink is fresh, the columns neat. She reads aloud, without emotion. The cost of wine poured, the price of robes worn, the gifts given by patrons, the debts increased for each courtesan. Each line is a weight, another stone in the mountain pressing down on their backs. When she finishes, she rolls the scroll tightly and places it on a growing stack. Her eyes lift briefly, pinning you in place. This is the truth, she says. The night may dazzle, but the day decides. No one leaves until the ledger is satisfied, and the ledger is never satisfied. You feel the weight of her words pressing into your chest. The shelves around you groan with the burden of countless debts, countless names inked and erased, countless lives recorded and consumed. The woman in green whispers beside you. This is why no one escapes. The chains are not of iron, but of ink. The madam dips her brush once more, the sound of bristles scratching across parchment echoing like the turning of a key in a lock. From somewhere above, you hear the creak of floorboards, the soft murmur of courtesans rising from their mats. Their day begins not with freedom, but with preparation for another night. Lessons will be resumed, songs rehearsed, verses memorized, dances repeated, until muscle remembers what the heart no longer feels. Faces will be painted, robes chosen, hairpins polished. By evening, the masks will return, the music will swell, and the illusion will breathe again. The woman in green glances at you, her expression unreadable. If you stay until tonight, she says softly, you will see how quickly the house forgets the dawn, how easily it builds another dream. The madam speaks again, her voice calm, detached. Every man who enters believes he is master here. Every woman who entertains believes she has some choice. But the truth is simpler. The house is master. The ledger is law. She sets her brush aside once more and closes her eyes. For a moment, she looks almost human tired, worn, perhaps even burdened by the weight of what she oversees. But when her eyes open again, the softness is gone, replaced by steel. She gestures toward the door. Go. The day is short and the night waits. Do not forget what you have seen. You rise, your legs unsteady, and follow the woman in green back up the staircase. The air grows warmer, heavier, with a sense of perfume and smoke returning as the house prepares. In the courtyard, courtesans hang robes on bamboo poles to air in the morning sun. The silk gleams faintly, colors bright even in the pale light. Servants scrub the floors, pour buckets of water across the stones, sweep away the ashes of last night's lanterns. It looks almost peaceful, almost ordinary, like any other household preparing for another day. But you know better now. You know the peace is only surface, that beneath it lies the endless cycle of illusion and debt. The woman in green pauses beneath a willow tree whose branches drape over the courtyard wall. She looks up at the sky where the pale sun has begun to rise. For a moment, she seems far away, her eyes distant. When I was a girl, she says softly, I thought the sun was freedom, that when dawn came, everything hidden in the dark would be washed away. But here, the sun only marks the time between one night and the next. It is not freedom, it is only waiting. She turns back to you, her face once again calm, composed. This is why you would not survive. Because even if you endured the night, even if you faced the dawn, the waiting would break you. The endless repetition, the cycle without end. Her words fall heavy, as unshakable as the ledgers stacked below. You look around the courtyard, at the courtesans preparing, at the servants moving silently, at the walls that hold them all. The house breathes, its cycle renewed, its hunger endless. And you realize, with a certainty that chills you more than the night ever did, that you are caught too. Even if you leave these walls, a part of you will remain, written into the ledger of memory, another whisper in the endless story of the El Yusan. The sun climbs higher, The courtyard brightens, but the shadow of the house does not fade. The courtyard brightens with morning light, yet its warmth feels thin, as though it cannot quite pierce the walls of the El Yusan. The courtesans hang silks in the sun, their pale arms lifting fabric that gleams like water. Servants sweep the stones, their brooms scratching in steady rhythm. The house prepares for another night, its pulse steady, its hunger endless. The woman in green tilts her head toward the heavy doors at the front. "Come," she says quietly. "You have seen the house from within. Now you must see how it looks from without." The doors open with a groan, and for the first time since you stepped inside, you are returned to the street. The air outside is fresher, tinged with the scent of steamed buns and boiling tea. Merchants arrange their wares. Scholars hurry past with scrolls tucked beneath their arms. Children chase each other through narrow alleys. The city hums with life, unaware or pretending not to know what lies behind the painted doors of the pleasure house. Yet the truth is never far away. Across the street, a man selling clay figurines shakes his head as he glances at the doors. "A den of shame," he mutters to a customer, "a place where virtue is lost and families are ruined." His words drip with condemnation, loud enough for passers-by to hear. Others nod, their faces arranged in righteous disapproval. And yet, you notice something else. Later that night, when the lanterns glow and the music swells, you know some of these same men will slip through those doors, their heads lowered, their coin purses hidden in their sleeves. The woman in green walks beside you, her steps measured, her expression calm. "They curse us in daylight," she says, "but they depend on us in darkness. Officials seek us when they tire of politics, merchants when they tire of their wives, scholars when they tire of their books. We are their shame and their salvation both." Her words settle like ash. You glance at the vendor again. He speaks loudly of morality, but his eyes flicker to the house more often than they should. This is the paradox of the Eldusan, condemned in daylight, sustained in darkness. As you walk, you pass a small shrine tucked into a corner of the street. Incense burns before the figure of Guanyin, the merciful goddess, her serene face watching over the alley. Women kneel in prayer, their voices soft. A mother touches her child's head, murmuring a plea for health and protection. The woman in green pauses before the shrine. "Even here," she whispers, "the courtesans come when they can. We light incense, we bow, we ask for mercy. But mercy comes slowly, and the night comes quickly." She does not kneel, but you see her eyes linger on the figure of the goddess, her lips pressed tightly together. Then she turns, her robe swaying, and continues down the street. The city itself seems divided. On one hand, it thrives markets bustling, temples ringing with bells, officials moving with dignity through wide avenues. On the other, it depends on shadows, gambling dens, opium houses, and the El Yusan hidden behind painted doors. The contradiction is everywhere. Confucian scholars lecture about virtue, yet write poems praising courtesans' beauty. Magistrates condemn prostitution, yet take bribes from madams to look the other way. Families curse the shame of daughters sold into the house, yet it is poverty and hunger that drive them there. The woman in green gestures toward a group of men hurrying past. Their robes are plain, but their eyes are sharp, their steps brisk. "Do you see them?" she asks. "Officials from the Yamen." By day, they raid the poorer houses, dragging girls into the street to prove their righteousness. By night, they drink in the finer halls, paid for with the very bribes they collect. Her voice carries no bitterness, only a weary acceptance, as though she has told this story too many times. You stop at a tea house, its tables spilling into the street. The woman orders a pot, her sleeves brushing the wooden counter as she lays down a coin. The vendor bows quickly, his eyes darting toward her robe, recognizing her, though he says nothing. When the tea arrives, she pours for you first, then herself. This is how it has always been, she says. The house feeds on the city, and the city feeds on the house. They condemn us, but they cannot do without us. They curse us, but they come back again and again. She sips her tea, her expression calm, almost resigned. This, too, is why you would not survive, because you still believe the world is divided into light and shadow, good and evil. But here, in the city, everything is both. The house is both. And in that contradiction, there is no escape. As the sun climbs higher, the street grows busier. Officials pass by on their way to court. Merchants haggle loudly at their stalls. Children run through the alleys, their laughter rising like bells. The city shines in daylight, yet you cannot unsee the shadows beneath its surface. You think of the ledger in the madam's chamber, the shelves groaning with debts. You think of the sick room behind the screens, where women wait for silence. You think of the masks painted fresh each night, the smiles rehearsed, the laughter measured, and you realize that while the city may pretend the house is hidden, it is in truth at its very heart. The woman in green finishes her tea and sets the cup down. "Come," she says softly, "the day is moving. The house will call us back soon. You have seen how the world condemns us. Now you must see how it sustains us." She rises, her robe trailing across the cobblestones, and begins to walk back toward the painted doors. And though the sunlight is bright and the street is alive, you feel a heaviness settle in your chest, because you know what waits behind those doors. And you know, with each step you take, that the cycle is already beginning again. The street bustles, voices rising and falling in the sunlight. But the woman in green keeps her steps steady, leading you back toward the heavy doors. With each stride, the noise of the marketplace fades, replaced once more by the muffled stillness of the Eluzan. The threshold closes behind you with a thud, and the illusion resumes its slow reconstruction. The house feels different in daylight. No lanterns burn, no music plays. The hall that shimmered with wine and laughter only hours ago lies bare, its mats rolled up, its cushions stacked neatly against the wall. Sunlight seeps in through narrow windows, thin as paper, cast in pale beams across the wooden floor. Servants move quickly, their arms laden with jars of oil, trays of fresh fruit, bolts of silk. They sweep, scrub, polish, and arrange, restoring the stage for another night's performance. The cycle, endless as the turning of a wheel, grinds forward. The woman in green gestures toward a side door. "Come," she says softly. "You must see how we prepare." The room she leads you to is wide and bright, its walls lined with low tables. Courtesans sit before bronze mirrors, their faces bare, their hair unpinned. Without paint, without jeweled combs, they look younger, almost like the girls they once were before the house claimed them. Yet the hollows beneath their eyes and the stiffness in their shoulders betray how far from girlhood they truly are. Bowls of powder sit on the tables, their surfaces smooth and pale. Brushes rest beside jars of rouge, sticks of coal, combs of bone. Robes of silk, freshly pressed, hang from wooden racks, their colors vivid even in the dim daylight: crimson, jade, violet, gold. The courtesans work in silence. Some dust their cheeks with powder, layering pale porcelain masks over weary skin. Others draw careful lines across their brows, paint their lips into blossoms, pin their hair into elaborate knots. Each movement is practiced, precise, part of a ritual older than memory. The woman in green takes her place at a mirror. She removes her hairpins one by one, laying them neatly on the table. Her hair falls heavy around her shoulders, darker and thicker than you imagined beneath the lacquered style she wore the night before. For a moment, she looks almost ordinary, tired, human, unguarded. Then she reaches for a comb and begins the slow process of binding herself once more into the shape the house demands. At the far end of the room, you hear the sound of strings. A courtesan sits with a zither across her lap, her fingers moving lightly, plucking notes that echo through the chamber. Another hums softly as she practices a song, her voice steady, though her eyes stare blankly ahead. A third kneels over a scroll, her brush scratching verse after verse, her lips moving as she memorizes the lines. The training is relentless. Every mistake is corrected, every hesitation noted. Their bodies are instruments, their voices weapons, their faces canvases. They sharpen themselves like blades, preparing to cut through the indifference of guests who will measure them not by their effort, but by the fleeting spark of illusion they can create. The woman in green leans toward her mirror, painting her lips with vermilion. "We begin each day by becoming someone else," she murmurs, "because the girl who lives behind the paint cannot survive the night." An attendant enters, carrying a tray of hairpins. He sets them on the table and bows before retreating. The pins gleam in the pale light jade carved into lotus blossoms, silver shaped into cranes, gold tipped with pearls. Beautiful, delicate, and heavy. A single pin could buy a year's worth of rice in the marketplace. Yet here they are tools, assigned and returned like instruments of labor. The woman in green chooses a pair of jade pins. She slides them into her coiled hair, her hands steady though her face betrays no satisfaction. "Every jewel, every robe, every brush stroke," she says, adds to the ledger. "Even our masks come with a price." You wander to the center of the room, where a courtesan kneels before a scroll. Her brush moves quickly, her strokes crisp, but her voice is flat as she recites lines of poetry. You recognize Onea verse about a moonlit river, a fisherman waiting for dawn. She repeats it again and again, as if the words themselves have become chains binding her tongue. At another table, a girl no older than 14 plucks a peeper. Her fingers tremble and the notes falter. An older woman beside her leans in, whispering correction. The girl nods, begins again, her jaw clenched, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The woman in green notices your gaze. "She is new," she says softly. "She has not yet learned how to wear the mask, but she will. Or she will break." The hours stretch thin. The room hums with the steady rhythm of preparation, brush against powder, string against finger, brush against parchment. It is not noisy, but it is not quiet either. It is the sound of transformation, of women turning themselves into illusions. The woman in green rises at last. Her face gleams pale, her lips crimson, her hair bound high with jade. The robe she selects is emerald silk embroidered with golden cranes, its sleeves long, its hem heavy. She moves with a grace that seems effortless. though you know it is built on years of practice and pain. She turns to you, her smile precise, her eyes unreadable once more. The mask has returned. This, she says, is why the house endures. Because we can always rebuild the illusion, night after night. No matter how broken the dawn leaves us, by evening, the dream is ready again. You feel the truth of her words as the courtesans rise one by one, their masks complete, their robes gleaming, their voices steady. The girls who sat weary and unpainted only hours ago now shimmer like visions, ready to step once more onto the stage of the night. The sun outside is still bright, but here, within the walls of the LU sun, night is already stirring. And you realize, with a weight that presses deep into your bones, that survival here is not measured in nights or days. It is measured in how long a person can endure the endless repetition of masks. The woman in green lowers her gaze. Tonight, she says, you will see the cycle begin again, and you will know why no one truly escapes. Her voice is soft, but the certainty in it is absolute. The afternoon passes in steady rhythm. Each brush stroke of paint, each pluck of strings, each measured recitation building the mask anew. By the time the sun begins its slow descent beyond the city walls, the courtesans stand transformed. The weary faces of mourning are gone. In their place, shimmer, women of elegance, mystery, and allure, every detail polished into perfection. The woman in green adjusts the sleeve of her robe, its silk trailing like water across the floor. She glances at you with eyes that reveal nothing. It begins again, she says softly, and though her voice is calm, you hear the weight of resignation beneath it. As twilight spreads across the rooftops, servants move quickly through the house. Lanterns are rehung, their glass polished, their wicks trimmed. Incense is lit in long bronze burners, the smoke curling upward like pale ghosts. Musicians tune their instruments, the strings humming softly in the air. The hall is swept clean, cushions arranged, trays of fruit and wine placed within easy reach. By the time the last ray of sunlight fades, the transformation is complete. The house no longer looks weary. It gleams, alive again, ready to devour another night. The woman in green stands among the other courtesans, her jade pins glinting, her painted lips curved into a practiced smile. They wait in silence, statues in silk, until the heavy doors creak open. The first guests arrive with the night. They step cautiously across the threshold, their eyes darting to the shadows, as if half afraid of being seen. Officials in embroidered robes, merchants with pouches heavy at their waists, scholars clutching scrolls all, drawn by the same hunger, all hiding behind the same pretense. At their entrance, the illusion ignites. Courtesans bow gracefully, voices soft as they offer greetings. Musicians strike their first notes, delicate and inviting. Attendants glide forward with wine, their trays balanced, their heads lowered. The house breathes again, its cycle renewed. You watch as the guests scatter across the hall, choosing tables, choosing companions, choosing distractions. The laughter rises quickly, fueled by the first cups of wine, by the first smiles offered like treasures. The air thickens once more with perfume and smoke, drowning the memory of the bare daylight hours. The woman in green glances at you as she pours wine for a guest. Her smile is flawless, but her eyes flicker briefly, as though reminding you that beneath the mask, nothing has changed. At a corner table, a scholar begins to recite poetry, his voice eager, his hands trembling slightly as he unrolls his scroll. His courtesan applauds softly, her voice warm as she praises his words. Another guest demands a song, and a courtesan with a voice like glass rises to sing of rivers and mountains, of love lost and remembered. The hall hums with performances, each one layered over the other, until the air itself feels like a tapestry, woven of sound and illusion. And yet, beneath it all, you sense the repetition. You have seen this before. The games, the songs, the laughter, they are the same as last night, as every night. What changes are the faces, the purses, the names written in the madam's ledger. The performance is eternal, only the players shift. The woman in green returns to your side. She places a cup before you, her sleeve trailing like a ripple of jade. "Do you see now?" she asks quietly, her voice almost lost beneath the music. "The cycle is endless. We survive not by living, but by repeating. Each night is the same mask, the same song, the same dream." She lifts her own cup, her painted smile steady. This is why you would not survive. Because even if you endured one night, how many nights could you endure the same illusion? How long before you forgot which smile was real, which word was true? Her eyes linger on yours for a moment too long, and then she turns away, moving gracefully back into the hall, her robe whispering across the floor. As the night deepens, the guests grow bolder. Laughter grows louder, games more reckless, songs more insistent. Wine flows like rivers, spilling across mats and staining silk. The masks are strong still, but you remember what comes later. The slipping, the whispers, the danger waiting when illusion falters. You think of the sick room behind the screen, of the ledger in the madam's chamber, of the courtesans rehearsing in the pale daylight. All of it lies beneath this glittering surface, hidden but unbroken. The woman in green's words echo in your mind. The cycle is endless. Hours pass, the hall gleams, the lanterns burn bright, the guests consume and consume. To them, it is a dream. To you, it is a repetition already fraying at the edges. The madam appears briefly, her robe dark, her face unreadable. She surveys the room, her gaze sweeping across the tables, the courtesans, the guests. With a single glance, she assures herself the cycle is intact, that the illusion holds. Then she retreats again, leaving her shadow behind. The woman in green returns once more, her smile practiced, her voice calm. She pours you another cup of wine, the liquid catching the lantern light. "Drink," she says softly. "The night is only beginning." You lift the cup, though your hand trembles. The wine tastes the same as before, bitter, sweet, numbing. The hall sounds the same, looks the same, feels the same. And you know, with a certainty that settles deep into your bones, that this is the truth of the Leo San. Not the music, not the laughter, not even the masks. The truth is the repetition, the cycle that consumes everything and leaves nothing behind. The lanterns burn brighter, the music swells, the laughter rises. The house has returned to life, and you, caught once more in its current, begin to wonder how long you can endure before the cycle breaks you too. The night blooms again, its cycle renewed. Music swells in the hall, laughter tumbles like waves, courtesans glide from guest to guest, with painted smiles and steady hands. To any newcomer, the scene would appear dazzling, intoxicating. But to you, who have already seen behind the silk screens, the repetition feels heavier. You sense the masks straining, the smiles stretch thin, the cycle demanding more than it gives. The woman in green moves gracefully, pouring wine, reciting lines of poetry, laughing softly at words that do not deserve laughter. Her mask is flawless, but you know now, it is not all she carries. Beneath the paint, beneath the jade pins, there is something else, something quieter, sharper, more dangerous. She returns to your side and kneels beside the table. "Listen closely tonight," she whispers, her painted lips curving into a smile. "Not every song is what it seems." At the center of the hall, a courtesan rises with a zither across her lap. She bows low, then begins to play. The notes drift through the air, delicate and shimmering, drawing silence from the crowd. Her voice follows, clear and sweet, singing of a fisherman who casts his net into an empty river again and again. Though the water gives him nothing, the guests murmur approval. They hear only a simple ballad, a tale of perseverance. But the woman in green leans close to your ear. "It is not about the fisherman," she says. "It is about us, casting, waiting, struggling, knowing the river will never give." Her words sharpen the song. Suddenly the sweetness tastes bitter. The melody is no longer a ballad, but a lament hidden in plain sight. Later, another courtesan takes the stage. She recites poetry, her brush painting characters across silk as she speaks. The verses praise the beauty of plum blossoms blooming against snow, their petals delicate but unyielding. The guests nod, their faces warmed by wine, impressed by her grace. The woman in green's gaze lingers on the brushstrokes. "Do you see?" she murmurs. "The plum blossom is not just beauty, it is endurance. Even in cold, even in hardship, it blooms. That is how we survive." The courtesan bows, her poem complete, and the scroll is carried away. The guests applaud, never knowing they have just heard words of quiet rebellion, of strength wrapped in metaphor. Throughout the night, you begin to notice it everywhere. In the verses chosen, in the songs sung, in the way courtesans linger on certain words. A melody that praises loyalty but trembles with despair. A proverb that praises patience but hides bitterness. A smile that shines brighter when the wine is weakest. The rebellion is not loud. It cannot be. To defy openly would be to invite ruin. But in quiet ways, in verses and gestures, in the space between words, they resist. The woman in green leads you to a corner of the hall, where a group of guests play riddles once more. She pours their wine, her laughter soft, her hands steady. But when one guest stumbles through a riddle about a bird trapped in a cage, she tilts her head ever so slightly, her eyes meeting yours. The answer is obvious. The bird cannot escape. Yet she whispers under her breath, so low only you can hear. The bird still sings. Her voice is calm, but the meaning is clear. Even in cages, even in chains, there is still song. The madam enters briefly, her presence heavy as ever. She surveys the hall, her gaze sharp, her steps measured. The courtesans bow, their smiles unbroken. The rebellion hides beneath the surface, invisible to her eye or, perhaps, not invisible. Only tolerated so long as it does not disrupt the flow of coin. Because even rebellion in this house must wear a mask. As the night wears on, the songs grow heavier, the laughter more brittle. Yet you feel something stirring in the quiet moments between. The courtesans, bound by debt, controlled by the ledger, watched by the madam, still find ways to speak. Not loudly, not dangerously, but enough to remind themselves that they are still human, still alive, still capable of thought and feeling beyond the mask. The woman in green returns to your side, her hands folded neatly, her smile precise. But her eyes hold a glimmer, faint as a lantern at dawn. "This is how we endure," she says softly. By hiding pieces of ourselves in poems, in songs, in whispers no one else notices. By remembering that even if the ledger owns our bodies, it does not yet own our souls. Her words settle in you like embers, quiet but burning. The hall hums with sound once more. Guests laugh, wine pours, masks shine. To anyone else, the night would seem perfect, its illusions intact. But now you know better. You hear the weight in the songs, the defiance in the verses, the strength hidden in delicate gestures. And you realize that survival here is not just endurance. It is remembering how to rebel quietly, how to keep something of yourself hidden from the ledger's ink, from the madam's shadow. The woman in green tilts her cup toward you. Drink, she says softly, not for survival, but for memory, so you do not forget what you have seen. You lift your cup, the wine bitter and sweet at once. Around you, the night continues. The cycle grinds forward. But beneath it, in the quiet places, rebellion hums like a secret melody, waiting to be heard. And you know, with a certainty deeper than before, that you would not survive here, not because you could not endure the masks, but because you could not carry the weight of silence. The quiet rebellion lingers like a hidden thread, woven through songs and poems, glimpsed only by those who know where to look. To the guests, it is nothing. To the courtesans, it is everything. Yet rebellion, no matter how soft, always carries danger. The woman in green pours wine for a guest, her smile flawless, her movements smooth as silk. But as she sets the cup down, another man at the table narrows his eyes. He is older, his robe marked with the insignia of an official. His lips twitch beneath a thin mustache as he leans forward. That poem, he says sharply, his voice cutting through the laughter, was not about blossoms at all. It was about something else. The courtesan freezes, her hand hovering over the wine jar. The room seems to hold its breath. For a moment, no one speaks. Then another guest laughs too loudly, slapping the table. You drink too much, my friend. You hear secrets in shadows. The laughter spreads, brittle and forced. The official frowns but does not press further, though his eyes linger suspiciously on the courtesan who recited the verse. The woman in green's hand trembles slightly as she refills a cup. Her smile remains, but her eyes dart toward you, a flicker of unease breaking through her mask. This is why we must be careful, she whispers when the official turns away. Even whispers can draw knives. The games resume, but the mood has shifted. The laughter is strained, the music sharper, the courtesan's gestures more cautious. The rebellion that shimmered so subtly before now feels dangerous, as though the house itself is listening more closely. At a nearby table, a merchant demands another song. The courtesan obeys, her voice clear, but she chooses a ballad with no hidden meanings, no metaphors, only the safe sweetness of love and spring. The guests nod approvingly, the tension easing slightly. Yet you see it in their eyes, the fear of being noticed, the terror of speaking too plainly. The rebellion has not ended, but it has been forced deeper, hidden further beneath the masks. The madam enters once more. Her presence rolls across the hall like thunder. The guests straighten, the courtesans bow, the musicians soften their notes. Her gaze sweeps the room, sharp as a blade, pausing for a fraction too long on the courtesan who dared to recite her plum blossom poem. The madam says nothing. She does not need to. Her silence is heavier than words, her glance a warning carved into the very air. She turns and departs, her robes trailing like a shadow across the floor. The woman in green exhales softly beside you. Do you see? The ledger records more than coin. It records obedience and disobedience. The night moves forward, though the weight remains. Guests drink, laugh, play, though their eyes dart nervously to the corners. Courtesans smile, sing, pour wine, though their hands tremble faintly with each gesture. The cycle continues, but the balance has shifted. The woman in green leans close, her lips near your ear. This is why survival is harder than it seems. It is not only the debt, not only the wine, not only the masks. It is the fear. The constant fear of saying too much, of being seen too clearly. Her words press against your chest, heavy as stone. Later, when the hall grows louder again, she guides you away, back into a smaller chamber where the air is cooler, quieter. She pours tea, her hands steady now, though her eyes remain watchful. We resist in whispers, she says softly. But whispers can be dangerous. One wrong word, one suspicious glance, and the mask cracks. And when it cracks, the house does not forgive. She sets her cup down and looks at you directly. This is why you would not survive. Because you do not know how to keep your soul silent. You would sing too clearly, speak too boldly, and the house would devour you before dawn. Her voice fades into the silence, leaving only the faint creak of wood, the distant hum of a zither, the muffled laughter that no longer feels real. You sip the tea, its bitterness settling into your bones, and you realize she is right. The rebellion is fragile, hidden in songs and poems, in glances and whispers. It sustains them, but it could destroy them just as easily. And you, unused to masks, unused to silence, could never carry such a weight. The lantern in the chamber flickers low. The woman in green adjusts her sleeve, her expression calm once more. Outside, the hall hums with the endless rhythm of another night, its cycle unbroken, its hunger undiminished. And you know, with a certainty colder than before, that the danger here is not only in the wine or the debts, but in the silence that must be carried like a blade hidden in the heart. The suspicion lingers long after the official's sharp voice has faded. Though the laughter resumes, though the games continue, an unease hangs over the hall like smoke that refuses to clear. The courtesans move with a practiced grace, their smiles intact, but you can see the tension in their shoulders, the flicker of fear in their eyes. The woman in green remains close, her sleeve brushing yours as though to anchor you. The house forgets nothing, she whispers, and when someone strays too far, the punishment comes quickly. Her words prove true sooner than you expect. Hours later, when the hall begins to thin, when the last of the merchants stumble toward the doors, when even the musicians play more softly, the madam returns. Her steps are slow, deliberate, her robe dark as midnight. Silence follows her like a shadow. She stops at the center of the hall. Her eyes sweep the room, pausing at one figure, the courtesan, who recited the plum blossom poem. The girl kneels quickly, her head bowed, her hands trembling in her lap. The guests glance away, pretending not to notice, their courage dissolved in wine. The madam says nothing. She does not need to. She gestures, a small flick of her wrist, and two attendants step forward. They seize the girl's arms and pull her to her feet. She stumbles, her hairpins rattling, her eyes wide with terror. The hall remains silent. No one dares to move. The woman in green lowers her gaze, her lips pressed tightly together. Her hand closes briefly over yours, a fleeting gesture of warning. Do not speak. The attendants drag the courtesan through a side door, her footsteps echoing down the corridor until they fade into nothing. The madam follows slowly, her robe trailing like the edge of a storm. When the door closes, the hall exhales. Laughter stirs nervously, cups are raised, conversations forced back into motion. But the fear remains, clinging to the air, heavy and sharp. You look at the woman in green. Her face is calm, her smile steady, but her eyes are darker now. This is the price of a crack in the mask, she says softly. One poem too honest, one verse too sharp, and the house reminds us who holds the ledger. Later, she leads you back into the quieter chambers. The laughter of the hall fades, replaced by the stillness of closed doors. She pours tea once more, though her hands move more slowly, her exhaustion heavier now. You cannot stop yourself from asking, what happens to her? The woman in green looks at you for a long moment, then lowers her eyes. Sometimes nothing more than a beating. Sometimes her debt doubled, her freedom pushed further away. Sometimes she trails off, her voice fading. You press, but she only shakes her head. The house does not speak of those who vanish. Their names remain in the ledger until the ink fades, and then even that is gone. Her silence says more than words could. You remember the sick room behind the screens, the pale faces on the mats, the women whose voices no longer carried songs. You remember the shelves of ledgers, endless columns of names and debts, and you realize the punishment is not always swift or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the slow erasure of a person, their beauty spent, their usefulness ended, their existence reduced to ink on parchment, until even that dries away. The woman in green sips her tea. This is why we whisper carefully, why rebellion must be hidden in blossoms and rivers, in fishermen and moons. Too clear, and the mask cracks. Too loud, and the house devours. She sets her cup down with a soft clink. And this is why you would not survive. Because you do not yet know how to speak in silence. You would shout where we whisper, and the house would silence you before dawn. The weight of her words presses heavily on you. The house, which only hours ago shimmered with music and laughter, now feels colder, sharper, more dangerous. Every smile, every gesture, every song carries a risk. Survival is not only performance, it is calculation, a constant balancing act between illusion and truth. You close your eyes briefly, the bitter taste of tea lingering on your tongue. When you open them again, the woman in green is watching you, her face unreadable. Remember this, she says quietly. The masks protect us. The masks imprison us. Without them, we are destroyed. With them, we are consumed slowly. Either way, the house takes everything. Her words echo in the silence, as heavy as the madam's ledgers, as sharp as the glance that condemned the girl with the plum blossom poem. The lantern flickers lower. Outside, the first hints of dawn creep into the sky, pale and unsteady. The night is nearly over, but you know the cycle will begin again. Another evening of masks, another night of illusions, another ledger filled with debts. The woman in green lowers her gaze, her voice almost a whisper. You asked why you would not survive a night here, but it is not the night that breaks you. It is knowing the night will always return. Her eyes meet yours, steady and unblinking. One night, perhaps, but not many. Never many. The silence that follows feels endless. The silence lingers long after the punished girl is gone. Even as the house stirs again, even as laughter and music attempt to fill the void, something remains missing. like a note struck wrong in a song. You sit in the quiet chamber with the woman in green, the tea cooling between you, the lantern's flame shrinking lower. For the first time since you entered the house, she does not wear her smile. Her lips are pressed into a thin line, her gaze distant. She looks older, not in years, but in weariness, as though each night has carved its weight into her bones. "You have seen much tonight," she says softly, her voice little more than a breath. "More than most guests ever do. Perhaps it is time you understood why I remain here." She sets her cup aside, folding her hands in her lap. Her painted nails catch the lantern light, though the polish has chipped at the edges. "I was not born in this city," she begins. "I came from a village far to the south, where the rice fields stretch like mirrors and the air hums with cicadas." Her eyes drift, as though seeing the fields in memory. "My family was poor. Too many mouths, not enough grain. When the floods came, our harvest washed away. My father borrowed from a moneylender, promising repayment after the next season. But the rains did not return, and the debt grew heavier than the soil we tilled." She pauses, her hands tightening. "One evening, he told me I must travel with a man to the city. He promised it was work in a noble house, singing, perhaps, or weaving. I believed him. I wanted to believe him." Her gaze hardens. "It was not a noble house. It was here." And by the time I understood, the doors had already closed behind me. The memory hangs in the air, heavy and unyielding. She reaches for the teapot, though it is nearly empty, and pours a thin stream into her cup. The steam rises briefly, then vanishes. At first, I thought it was only for a time. I would work, sing, learn, and eventually pay the debt they claimed I owed. But every robe, every comb, every bowl of rice was added to the ledger. No matter how much I earned, the debt grew larger. Freedom was always just beyond reach, like the horizon. Her voice steadies, though her eyes glimmer faintly. "That was many years ago. I no longer count how many. The girl who walked into this house is gone. Only the courtesan remains." She falls silent, her gaze fixed on the lantern flame. You wait, the weight of her words pressing against your chest. Finally, she speaks again. "This is why we resist in whispers. Because if we shouted, if we fought, we would be crushed. The house does not allow rebellion. But in poems, in songs, in small moments, we remember who we were. I remember the girl in the rice fields, though she feels like someone else now." She tilts her head toward you, her expression softer than before. "Perhaps that is why I speak to you. You listen differently. Most men come here only for the dream. You see the cracks in it. Her confession lingers between you, fragile as porcelain. You do not know what to say, and perhaps nothing is needed. The truth is enough." The lantern sputters, its flame shrinking to an ember. She reaches out and steadies it with a hand, adjusting the wick. The flame brightens slightly, casting her face into sharper relief. For a moment, you see her as she truly is not the courtesan, not the mask, but the woman beneath, tired, strong, trapped. She exhales slowly, her voice barely audible. "This is why you would not survive. Because you still believe freedom is possible. Here, we learn to live without it." A bell tolls faintly in the distance. The night is not yet over, but it edges closer to dawn. The woman in green gathers her robe and rises, her movements graceful even in exhaustion. The mask begins to slip back into place, her smile returning, her eyes steady once more. "We must go," she says. The cycle waits for no one. She leads you back through the corridor, the painted screens flickering in the lantern light. The house hums quietly, its breath steady, its heart unbroken. In the main hall, the musicians strum softly, their notes thin, fragile. A few guests linger, their heads heavy with drink, their words slurred. Courtesans move among them, still smiling, still pouring, though their bodies sag with fatigue. The woman in green guides you past them, her steps sure, her expression unreadable once more. She has spoken her truth, but the mask covers it again, hiding it beneath the endless cycle. As you follow, her words echo in your mind. We resist in whispers. We live without freedom. We survive by forgetting who we were. And you know, with a clarity that chills you, that she is right. You could never live this way. You could never carry the weight of silence, the burden of masks, the endlessness of nights without end. One night is enough to break you. Many nights would erase you completely. The hall is hushed, its lamps burning low. The last of the guests are gone, their laughter fading into the streets outside, leaving behind only spilled wine and the smell of incense clinging to the air. Courtesans move quietly, gathering cushions, straightening mats, their painted smiles finally softening as exhaustion weighs them down. The woman in green guides you toward a side corridor, her steps careful, her robe trailing like a shadow. "There is something more you must see," she whispers. "You have seen her punishments. But the madam rules not only through fear. She binds us also with kindness." Her voice lingers uneasily in your ears. Kindness in this house? The word feels out of place, like a fragile vase set among blades. Yet as she leads you down the corridor, you realize the madam's power cannot come from fear alone. Fear breaks quickly, but kindness calculated, deliberate binds even more tightly. You arrive at a chamber lit by only a single lantern. Inside, the madam sits cross-legged at a low table. Her robe is plain now, her hair unpinned, her face bare of paint. Without her mask, she looks older, yet no less commanding. In front of her is a tray of steaming tea and bowls of rice porridge, the steam curling into the air. Around her kneel several courtesans, their robes simple, their faces weary. One coughs softly into her sleeve. Another lowers her gaze as though afraid even to look at the madam. Yet when the madam pours tea into their cups, her movements are gentle, precise. "Drink," she says, her voice low but steady. "Eat. You cannot work if you collapse." The courtesans bow deeply, murmuring thanks, their voices hoarse. They sip the tea, spoon the porridge, their trembling hands steadying as warmth spreads through them. For a moment, they look almost comforted, as though the madam has shown them mercy. The woman in green leans close to you, her words no louder than breath. This is how she holds us, not just with punishments, but with favors. A cup of tea when we are sick, a kind word when we are afraid. She gives just enough to make us believe she cares, enough to keep us loyal. And so we endure. Her eyes flick toward the porridge bowls, her expression unreadable. But every act of kindness is written into the ledger. Every sip, every spoonful, every gesture of mercy, it all adds to the debt. What seems like compassion is only another chain. The madam's gaze sweeps over the women kneeling before her. Her expression is not warm, but neither is it cruel. It is careful, measured, the face of someone who knows exactly how much to give and when. "You must be strong," she says. "The guests will return tonight, and you must shine again. Rest now. Tomorrow you will practice your songs. The house depends on you." The women bow again, murmuring gratitude, their voices thick with emotion. For a moment, you almost believe the madam cares. But then you remember the ledgers, the punishments, the girl dragged away for a careless poem. The kindness is real, but it is also calculation. The woman in green takes your arm gently, leading you away before the madam can notice you lingering. Her steps are quick, her voice low. Do you see now? This is why she endures. Fear makes us obey. Kindness makes us stay. Even when we hate her, even when we dream of escape, we remember the tea, the porridge, the small mercies. And so we remain. Her words press into your chest, heavy as stone. The madam's power is deeper than chains or ledgers. It is the power of someone who understands that survival is not only about control, but about giving just enough hope to keep the cycle alive. Back in the smaller chamber, the woman in green pours tea for you. Her hands are steady, her mask in place once more, though her eyes betray a flicker of unease. This is why you would not survive, she says softly, because you would see her kindness for what it is. Most do not. They cling to it, believe it, let it bind them. But you would know the truth. And the truth here is unbearable. She sets your cup before you. The tea tastes bitter, though it is meant to be sweetened. Perhaps it is only your tongue, or perhaps the bitterness is part of the lesson. From somewhere above, you hear the faint creak of floorboards, the rustle of robes as courtesans settle into their narrow chambers. The house exhales, preparing for the cycle to begin again. The woman in green leans back, her eyes half closed. Every morning, she murmurs, she gives just enough food, words, rest. And every night, she takes everything back. That is her power. That is why the house will never fall. Her voice fades into the silence, leaving you with the weight of her words. The lantern flickers lower, its flame struggling to hold. Dawn edges closer. You close your eyes, the taste of bitter tea lingering, the image of the madam pouring porridge etched into your mind. And you realize, with a clarity colder than before, that survival here is not only about masks or debts or silence. It is about learning to accept kindness that is also cruelty, comfort that is also control. You know you could not for a night, not for many nights, and that is why you would not survive. Dawn has come, pale and steady, its light slipping through the cracks of the shutters. Yet even in daylight, the LU sun does not truly sleep. Courtesans rest in narrow chambers, attendants sweep floors, servants polish cups until they gleam. And the madam's brush scratches steadily in her chamber, ink binding debts into permanence. The woman in green rises slowly, her robe whispering across the floor. She gestures for you to follow. You have seen how the house binds us within its walls, but you must also see how its shadow stretches beyond them. Once more, the heavy doors creak open. The street outside is alive with morning. Vendors shout over steaming pots of soy broth and rice cakes. Children run barefoot across the cobblestones, their laughter rising like bells. Scholars hurry past, scrolls tucked under their arms, their brows furrowed in thought. It all looks ordinary, but the woman in green's eyes narrow. Do not be fooled. The house breathes here too. She leads you into the flow of the street, her steps measured, her painted face hidden beneath a plain veil. To passers-by, she looks like any other woman, though her posture betrays a poise that cannot be disguised. At the corner of the market, a merchant weighs bolts of silk. His voice is loud, his laughter booming as he boasts of profits. But when the woman in green passes, he bows quickly, his eyes darting away. You notice the faint mark stitched into his sleeve a crane, the same symbol embroidered on the madam's robe. The merchants trade with us, the woman murmurs. Wine, silk, powder, incense. They curse the house in public, but in truth, it feeds them. Every robe a courtesan wears, every jar of wine poured, every lantern, lit all of it, passes through their hands. And so, they grow rich, and the cycle continues. Further along, you pass a group of officials gathered outside a tea house. Their voices are low, their faces stern, but their sleeves bear the faint scent of perfume, the telltale stain of wine. They speak of virtue, of law, of stamping out corruption, but you remember their faces from the hall the night before. The woman in green's voice is dry. By day, they condemn us. By night, they depend on us. And in return, they protect us, so long as the madam pays her dues. Her eyes flicker toward a man in the group, whose robe is newer, cleaner than the rest. That one collects the taxes, or pretends to. The house ensures his purse is never empty. You see it clearly now. The house is not a hidden place tolerated in shadows. It is woven into the fabric of the city itself. Its debts reaching into markets, its secrets binding officials, its coins oiling the wheels of power. The woman leads you to a small temple tucked between shops. Incense burns in thick coils above the altar, smoke curling toward the rafters. Worshippers kneel, their foreheads pressed to the floor, their prayers rising in murmurs. At the edge of the altar, you notice a carved plaque. Names are inscribed in careful characters, each one paired with an offering, bundles of silk, jars of oil, bolts of fabric. Some names you recognize from the ledgers you glimpsed in the madam's chamber. The woman in green's gaze lingers on the plaque. The house donates generously to the temple. Robes for the statues, oil for the lamps, silver for the coffers. In return, the monks speak no ill of us. They pray for our health, our safety, our souls. Her lips curve into a smile, though it is bitter. Even the gods must be bribed. As you leave the temple, the bustle of the street feels heavier. Everywhere you look, you see the house's influence merchants, whose wealth depends on silk and wine, officials whose loyalty is bought in coin and secrets, temples whose silence is purchased with offerings. The woman in green walks beside you, her voice low. This is why the house endures. It is not only a place of masks and music, it is a pillar of the city, though no one will admit it. To tear it down would unravel everything around it. And so, it is condemned, and yet sustained, feared, and yet protected. She stops at a street corner, the veil hiding most of her face, though her eyes are sharp. This is why you would not survive, because you still think the house is only within those walls. But once you enter, you belong to it everywhere. Even if you walk free, its shadow follows. In markets, in temples, in courts, in whispers. There is no escape. The words sink deep, heavier than before. The house is no longer only a place of wine and masks, of songs and ledgers. It is a web stretching across the city, binding not only the courtesans, but also the merchants, officials, priests, and guests who depend on it. You glance back toward the painted doors, their green lacquer gleaming faintly in the morning sun. Behind them, the cycle is already preparing to begin again. Ahead, the city thrums with life, yet every thread of it seems tied to that house. The woman in green lowers her gaze. Come, we should return. The afternoon grows short, and the night waits for no one. She turns, her robe trailing across the stones, her veil fluttering in the morning breeze. You follow, though your steps feel heavy, as though you too are caught in the web she has shown you. The doors close behind you once more, the light of day cut off, the air filled again with incense and silence. The house exhales, readying itself for another night. And you realize, with a certainty sharper than ever before, that survival here is impossible, because the house does not only consume nights, it consumes the world beyond them too. The heavy doors close behind you, muting the bustle of the city. Inside, the house breathes its own rhythm again. Incense curling through the corridors, servants rushing to prepare, courtesans murmuring as they retouch paint and adjust hairpins. The madam's voice rises faintly from her chamber, steady and controlled as she dictates accounts to an attendant. The woman in green leads you down a side passage, quieter than the main hall. You have seen the cycle between the house and the world, she says softly. But there is another cycle, one hidden within these walls, between us. Her eyes flick toward a room ahead, its door left slightly open. Inside, several courtesans sit around a table, scattered with brushes, rouge, and silk ribbons. Their voices are low but sharp, carrying the edge of rivalry. One woman, her robe crimson embroidered with golden peonies, leans forward with a smile too sharp to be kind. "The scholar asked for me again last night," she says. "He promised me a poem. Perhaps he will make me his concubine before the year ends." Another woman, dressed in pale violet, laughs lightly. "A poem. Scholars write verses for every courtesan they see. Wait until his purse is empty, then see if his devotion remains." The first woman's eyes flash, but her smile does not falter. Their laughter ripples, brittle and cold, like porcelain on the edge of breaking. The woman in green closes the door softly before they can notice you. She exhales. "We compete for survival. The guests bring coin, and coin reduces debt. The more favored you are, the closer you move to freedom, though true freedom is almost never reached. Still, the illusion drives us." Her eyes darken. Favor breeds rivalry. We smile together in the hall, but in these chambers, we measure each other like enemies. She leads you further down the corridor, where another door stands ajar. Inside, a younger courtesan kneels, weeping softly into her sleeve. An older woman kneels beside her, murmuring words of comfort. "She is new," the woman in green explains quietly. "Her first guest was cruel. She will heal, but the scar will remain. Already others whisper she is weak, that she will not endure." And so her place sinks lower, her debt heavier. Her voice carries no judgment, only weariness. Some courtesans form alliances sisters, we call them. They share poems, comfort, secrets. Together, they endure. Others betray each other, hoping to climb higher by pushing another down. It is another ledger, unwritten but no less binding. You see it clearly now. The masks are not only for the guests, they are also for each other. Behind painted smiles lie jealousies, resentments, desperate bargains. In a house where every gesture is weighed, every smile has a price, even friendship is dangerous. The woman in green pauses, her gaze far away. "I had a sister once," she says, softly. "We entered the house around the same time. She was clever, quick with words, beloved by many. For a time, we shared everything, songs, secrets, even hope." Her voice falters, then steadies. But hope is a dangerous thing here. She grew too bold, too defiant. The madam noticed. One night, she was gone. No explanation, no farewell, only silence. Her hands tighten on her sleeve. I learned then that bonds make you vulnerable. Now I keep my mask not only for the guests, but for the women beside me. It is the only way to survive. The corridor hums with faint sounds, whispers behind closed doors, the soft rustle of silk, the muted pluck of a string. The house feels alive not only with performance, but with the tension of hidden rivalries and fragile alliances. The woman in green looks at you steadily. This is why you would not survive. Because you still believe survival is possible alone or with friendship unbroken. But here, bonds twist into chains and kindness can turn to betrayal overnight. Her voice lowers. Even we cannot always trust each other. She guides you back toward the courtyard. The courtesans gather there now, their robes bright, their hair gleaming, their faces painted into perfection once more. They stand together, but the air between them vibrates with tension. Each smile is measured, each glance calculated. The madam appears at the top of the steps, her robe black embroidered with cranes. She surveys them with the gaze of a commander inspecting soldiers. Tonight, she says simply, we host a magistrate. The word ripples through the group. A magistrate means wealth, opportunity, perhaps even escape. But it also means danger, greater scrutiny, harsher demands, sharper consequences. The courtesans bow deeply, their voices unified in a murmured acknowledgement. But as they rise, you see their eyes flicker, measuring, calculating, competing. The woman in green stands among them, her mask flawless once more. Yet you sense the weight pressing against her. The silent battle fought not with swords, but with smiles. Not with blows, but with verses and glances. The sun lowers. Lanterns are lit. The house breathes deeply, ready for another night. The courtesans disperse, some to prepare their instruments, others to rehearse verses, still others to rest before the storm. The woman in green returns to you, her eyes steady. Now you see. Survival here is not only against the ledger, or the guests, or the madam. It is also against each other. We are sisters and rivals both. The house ensures it, because rivalry feeds obedience. She lowers her voice, her words heavy. This is why you would not survive, because you still believe survival means unity. But here, survival means silence, calculation, endurance, and endurance has no sisters. The lanterns flare brighter. The house hums louder. The cycle turns once more. And you know, as the night begins again, that even within the walls of silk and shadow, the greatest danger may not be the guests, nor the debts, nor the madam's ledger. It may be the courtesans themselves, bound together by rivalry as much as by sorrow. The courtyard is swept clean, lanterns polished until they gleam like jewels in the deepening dusk. Courtesans gather in the hall, their robes brighter than usual, their hair adorned with more elaborate pins, their faces painted into blossoms of perfection. The air hums with tension, as if every string of every instrument has been wound tighter, waiting for the moment to be plucked. The woman in green stands among them, her jade robe trailing across the floor. She does not speak, but you feel the heaviness in her breath. Tonight is different. Tonight, a magistrate comes. The heavy doors creak open. Attendants enter first, carrying lanterns and speaking in sharp tones, clearing the path. Then he appears, the magistrate. His robe is embroidered with dragons and clouds, his hat stiff with black wings. His expression is grave, his gaze sharp. Behind him trail lesser officials, their hands folded, their eyes darting nervously around the hall. The courtesans bow low as one, their sleeves spreading like waves across the floor. The madam steps forward, her robe dark, her face calm, her voice measured. "Honored magistrate," she says, bowing, "our house welcomes you." The magistrate inclines his head slightly, acknowledging the greeting but offering no warmth. He moves to the center of the hall, taking his place at the largest table. Attendants set cushions, pour wine, lay trays of fruit and sweetmeats. The courtesans rise, their smiles blooming once more. The performance begins. Music swells from the platform. A courtesan plucks the pipa, her fingers flying across the strings, her voice rising in a song of loyalty and virtue. Another performs a dance, her sleeves trailing like clouds, her body bending in elegant arcs. Every note, every step is precise, rehearsed, designed to please a man whose gaze remains cold, calculating. The magistrate drinks, but sparingly. He listens, but without expression. The hall strains under the weight of his silence. The woman in green moves gracefully to pour his wine. Her hands are steady, her smile flawless, but her eyes flicker briefly toward you, a silent warning. This is no ordinary guest. This is power itself, wrapped in silk and law. The magistrate speaks at last. His voice is deep, carrying easily across the hall. "Your house is famed in this city," he says, "but fame brings scrutiny. Tell me, madam, why should it endure?" The words hang heavy. The courtesans lower their eyes, their smiles fixed. The madam bows, her face composed. "Because, honored magistrate, our house serves not only men's desires, but the city itself. Here, merchants find respite, officials find counsel, scholars find inspiration. We provide harmony, and harmony is the root of order." The magistrate's lips twitch faintly, though whether in amusement or disdain you cannot tell. "Harmony," he repeats, "and what of virtue?" The hall stills. The word is dangerous. Virtue is the shield behind which condemnation hides, the weapon officials wield when they wish to strike. The madam does not falter. Virtue lies not in walls, but in balance. We do not claim to be temples, nor schools, nor courts. We are what we are. But even in this, there is order. Without us, men would stray elsewhere, into chaos, into crime. Better they come here, where we keep records, where we maintain peace. Her words are bold, yet her tone is calm, almost deferential. The magistrate studies her for a long moment, then lifts his cup and drinks. The tension in the hall loosens slightly, like a bowstring easing. The courtesans redouble their performance. One recites poetry praising loyalty to the emperor, her voice trembling like wind through reeds. Another plays the guqin, its deep tones resonant and solemn. Every act is chosen not for allure, but for dignity, designed to cloak the house in the language of refinement and culture. The magistrate listens, his expression unreadable. His officials laugh politely, their eyes lingering on the courtesans with less restraint. The woman in green kneels beside him, offering fruit with delicate hands. She bows deeply, her smile perfect, her voice soft, as she recites a verse about rivers flowing to the sea, a metaphor for loyalty flowing to the court. For a moment, you think you see the magistrate's eyes soften, but it passes quickly, his mask as strong as theirs. Wine flows, though not as freely as usual. The magistrate drinks little, but those around him drink enough for many. The hall hums with forced laughter, strained songs, brittle applause. Yet beneath it all lies the madam's careful orchestration, ensuring every note, every gesture aligns with the performance of dignity she has promised. The woman in green leans close as she refills your cup. "This is how the house survives," she whispers, "by bending to power, by disguising itself as culture, as refinement, by convincing men that what they condemn by day is necessary by night. Her smile remains steady, but her eyes glimmer with something darker. This is why you would not survive. Because you would see too clearly how easily power is deceived and how willingly it accepts the deception. The magistrate rises at last. The courtesans bow low, their sleeves spreading across the floor. The madam steps forward, her voice calm. We thank you, honored magistrate, for gracing our hall. May harmony continue. The magistrate inclines his head slightly, then departs with his attendants. The doors close behind them, and the hall exhales. Laughter erupts nervously. Wine is poured more freely. Songs turn lighter. The cycle resumes, the illusion intact once more. The woman in green sits beside you, her shoulders lowering slightly. We have survived another test, she says softly. But the test will come again. Always again. Her voice fades into the hum of the hall, leaving you with the certainty that the house's survival depends not only on illusions, but on its ability to bend, to bow, to cloak itself in whatever mask power demands. And you know, as the night deepens once more, that you could never endure such endless submission. The heavy doors close behind the magistrate, and the hall exhales as though a great weight has been lifted. The courtesans rise slowly, smoothing their robes, their painted smiles slipping for just a moment before snapping back into place. Laughter bubbles up again. Wine is poured more freely. Music resumes with lighter notes. But beneath the sound, tension lingers. The woman in green pours your cup, her hand steady, though her voice carries a faint edge. Now comes the second performance, she murmurs. Not for the magistrate, but for each other. At a corner table, the courtesan in crimson with golden peonies embroidered on her robe tilts her head proudly. Did you see? She says to those nearby, her voice just loud enough to carry. When I sang, the magistrate's eyes softened. He even lifted his cup. That is no small thing. Another courtesan, dressed in pale violet, laughs lightly, though her eyes glint. Softened? Perhaps. But it was when I played the guqin that he nodded. A man like him values solemnity, not empty songs. Their words cut sharper than their smiles. Around them, others lean in, offering compliments that are half praise, half poison. Each one jostles for position, each one desperate to claim the magistrate's fleeting favor as their own. The woman in green lowers her gaze. This is how the house keeps us bound. We are set against one another, fighting for crumbs of approval. The madam encourages it because rivals do not unite. We measure each other instead of the walls around us. Her voice softens further. This too is survival, but survival that eats itself. Later, in the side chamber, the quarrels continue. The courtesan in crimson accuses the one in violet of stepping too far forward during the performance, stealing the magistrate's attention. The courtesan in violet retorts that crimson sang too loudly, desperate for notice. Their voices rise, sharp as knives, their sleeves trembling with every gesture. Others watch silently, some hiding smirks, some feigning concern. But none intervene. Rivalry is the air they breathe. The woman in green does not speak. She sits quietly, her face unreadable, though her eyes flick toward you once, as if to say, "Do you see now?" The madam enters. Her presence silences the quarrels instantly. She does not raise her voice, does not scold. She simply looks at each woman in turn, her gaze cool, unblinking. "You fought for his favor," she says calmly. "Good. That is your duty. But remember, his favor belongs not to you. but to the house. Every coin he spends, every gift he offers, every whisper he speaks will pass through my hands first. The courtesans bow low, murmuring assent. Their rivalry does not vanish, but it recedes, tucked beneath lowered lashes and painted smiles. The madam turns and departs, her robes trailing behind her. Silence lingers in her wake, heavier than scolding. The woman in green exhales softly. This is how it works. We fight each other, but in the end, she holds everything. No matter who is favored, no matter who receives the poem or the jewel, it is hers first. We are left only with the scraps she allows. She folds her hands in her lap. This, too, is why you would not survive. Because you would see the rivalry for what it is, a cage within a cage. And cages like these crush even the strongest spirits. Later that night, when the hall has emptied of guests, when the lanterns burn lower and the air grows colder, the courtesans retreat to their chambers. Some whisper bitterly about the magistrate. Others gloat softly, their laughter edged with triumph. The rivalry simmers still, waiting to flare again. The woman in green guides you to the courtyard. The willow branches sway gently in the breeze, their shadows long across the stone. She looks upward, her face pale in the moonlight. When I was younger, she says softly, I believed favor was freedom, that if I pleased the right man, he would lift me from this place. I fought for it, just as they do now. But favor is another chain. It binds you to a man instead of a house. And in the end, the chain still holds. She lowers her gaze, her eyes steady on yours. That is why I no longer fight. I smile, I sing, I pour, but I do not chase favor. I know what it cost. Her words linger in the night air, heavy with resignation, heavy with truth. The house hums behind you, its lanterns flickering, its cycle grinding forward. The rivalry continues, the masks remain, the ledger grows heavier. And you realize, with a certainty colder than before, that survival here is not only about masks or debts or punishments. It is about enduring the endless competition. The way the house turns women against each other until even friendship becomes another blade. The woman in green folds her sleeves over her hands. This is why you would not survive, because you still believe favor is a gift. Here, we know it is only another debt. The willow branches sway again, their leaves brushing the stones like whispers. The night deepens, and with it, the cycle coils tighter around you. And you know, as the lanterns burn lower, that you could never bear such endless rivalries, such hollow victories, such fleeting scraps of power. The willow branches sway more violently now, their leaves rattling like restless fingers. A wind rises from the east, carrying the smell of rain. The woman in green lifts her head, her expression unchanged, though her eyes glimmer faintly. A storm is coming, she murmurs. Even the house cannot silence thunder. Moments later, the sky splits with a flash of lightning. Thunder follows, rolling across the tiled rooftops like a drumbeat from the heavens. Courtesans glance up from the courtyard, their painted faces briefly illuminated by the pale fire in the sky. Servants rush to secure lanterns, to pull in bolts of silk hung to air, to shutter windows before the rain arrives. The illusion falters. For a heartbeat, the house is not a place of masks and music, but simply wood and stone trembling against the sky. The rain begins as a soft patter, then grows heavier, slamming against the roof, spilling down the eaves in rushing streams. Water seeps across the stones of the courtyard, soaking hems of robes, smearing lines of powder painted too carefully onto tired faces. A courtesan gasps as her hairpin slips from its knot, her jade ornament clattering onto wet stone. Another curses under her breath, her painted smile washed away in streaks. The storm strips away the surface, leaving behind the raw, fragile truth. The woman in green stands unmoving, her robe darkening as rain spots spread across the silk. She closes her eyes briefly, as though welcoming the storm's intrusion. For once, she says softly, the sky speaks louder than the house. Inside, the hall is chaos. Lanterns sputter in the drafts, their flames shrinking low. Musicians set down their instruments, the strings too damp to sing. Guests grumble, their cups overturned by rushing attendants. The madam appears, her voice sharp, her commands cutting through the thunder. Servants hurry to relight, to reassure, to preserve what remains of the illusion. But the storm will not be ignored. Lightning flashes again, illuminating every crack in the painted screens, every stain on the cushions, every shadow that the house prefers to keep hidden. For a moment, the truth is laid bare. The woman in green leads you back into a side corridor, away from the chaos. Water drips through a crack in the roof, pooling on the wooden floor. She kneels and wipes it away with her sleeve, her painted face calm even as the storm roars above. This is why the house fears storms, she says, because storms do not care for masks. They strip us bare, reveal the cracks, remind us that even the strongest walls are only wood and stone. Her eyes flick toward the ceiling, but storms also pass, and when they do, the masks return, stronger than before. That is how the cycle survives. Thunder shakes the beams above you. A courtesan runs past, her robe soaked, her hair undone, her face streaked with rain and paint. She glances at you briefly, her eyes wild, then vanishes into another chamber. The woman in green watches her go. For a moment, she was free, she murmurs. No mask, no smile, only herself. But tomorrow, she will wear the paint again, and no one will remember. Her voice softens further. This is why you would not survive, because you would cling to the storm, to the truth it reveals. We cannot, we must forget, or the cycle breaks us. The storm rages on, but slowly, the house begins to bend it back into silence. Lanterns are relit, music resumes in halting notes, courtesans smooth their hair, repaint their faces. Guests laugh nervously, pretending the thunder is no more than a distant drum, pretending the lightning does not show them what lies beneath the silk. The madam moves through the hall, her robe dry despite the rain, her expression as steady as stone. She does not glance at the leaks, at the smeared paint, at the cracks revealed by lightning. Her mask never falters, and by her steadiness, the house steadies too. The woman in green pours tea for you in the quiet chamber, her sleeves damp, her hairpins askew. She does not fix them. For once, she allows the imperfection to remain. Storms remind us, she says, that nothing lasts forever. Not beauty, not masks, not even the house. But while it stands, we must endure. That is the only law here. She sets a cup before you. The tea is weak, the leaves stretch thin from too many infusions. Still, it warms your hands. Her eyes linger on yours. This is why you would not survive. Because storms would give you hope, hope that the walls could fall, that the cycle could break. And hope is more dangerous than despair. Her words settle like stones, heavy and unshakable. The rain begins to ease, the thunder fading into the distance. The lanterns burn brighter once more, the music steadier, the laughter returning in cautious ripples. The masks are rebuilt even before the storm has passed. as if the house refuses to allow the world outside to leave a lasting mark. The woman in green leans back, her eyes closing briefly. Tomorrow, the streets will be washed clean. The vendors will smile, the magistrates will speak of virtue, the guests will return. And none will remember that tonight the sky reminded us of the truth. She opens her eyes, her smile returning perfect, painted, unreadable. But you will remember. And that memory would break you long before the ledger ever could. The storm fades, leaving only damp stone and heavy silence in its wake. The house exhales once more, its cycle unbroken, its hunger renewed. And you know, with a certainty deeper than before, that you would not survive not because of storms, but because of what storms reveal, and because you could never forget. By dawn, the storm has passed. The sky hangs clear and pale, the air washed clean, the streets glistening with puddles. Vendors emerge cautiously, sweeping away leaves and debris. Children laugh as they chase paper boats down gutters, still carrying the last of the rain. To the city, it is as though the storm was no more than a passing tantrum of the heavens. But to the house, the storm was something else. It tore at masks, cracked illusions, revealed truths that should never have been seen. And such truths cannot be allowed to linger. The woman in green ties her robe tighter, her jade pins reset into perfect place. Today will be a busy day, she says, her voice hushed. The house must silence the streets before whispers grow. You walk with her through the courtyard, the stones still slick with rain. Servants scrub furiously, erasing any sign of damage. Robes are rewashed, hairpins polished, screens repainted where water stained the silk. By midday, the hall looks as though the storm never touched it. But outside, in the marketplace, tongues are already moving. At a noodle stall, a vendor chuckles as he tells a customer, "I saw them last night, courtesans running through the rain like frightened cats, their paint washing away. A fine sight, I tell you, masks melting into nothing." His laughter spreads to those around him. But before long, a man in plain robes approaches, his eyes sharp, his voice low. "Best not to speak too loudly, friend. The madam has ears everywhere." The laughter dies quickly. The woman in green's voice is soft as you move through the stalls. This is how the house survives. Storms not just with repairs, but with silence. Gossip is dangerous. It must be smothered before it grows. You see it happen again and again. A scholar begins to jest about lanterns sputtering in the wind. An attendant from the house, dressed plainly, happens to pass by, his gaze lingering just long enough to quiet the words. A group of boys laugh about paint streaking down faces. Their laughter falters when a courtesan in her plain veil appears to buy incense, her silence sharper than any scolding. The city learns quickly, what was seen is not to be spoken. At the edge of the market, you pause by a tea house. Inside, officials sit together, their voices low. One speaks of thunder cracking open the hall, of guests startled, of courtesans slipping. Another hushes him. "Enough. Do you want the madam to hear? Do you want her ledger to carry your name?" The table falls silent. Cups clink. Tea pours. But no more words are spoken. The woman in green turns to you. Secrets are not only gathered here. They are erased too. The house decides which truths live and which are buried. Her eyes glimmer faintly. This is why you would not survive. Because you would speak too freely, laugh too openly, remember too clearly. Here, survival means silence, not just within, but without. Back at the house, The madam inspects the hall. Her robe is dark, her hair pinned, her face calm. She walks slowly, her gaze passing over each cushion, each lantern, each screen. Nothing betrays the chaos of the night before. An attendant kneels before her, presenting a scroll. She unrolls it, her eyes scanning the names of vendors paid, officials bribed, whispers silenced. She nods once, then rolls it tightly and sets it aside. The storm is gone, she says simply, and so are the words of it. The courtesans bow deeply, their faces remain expressionless, but you sense their relief. Another threat erased, another night survived. Later, in the quiet chamber, the woman in green pours you tea. The steam curls upward, warm and soothing, though the bitterness remains. She lowers her gaze. We live in storms often, she says softly. Not always from the sky, but from within. Anger, jealousy, rebellion, sorrow. They break through like thunder. They wash us bare like rain. And always the house silences them. The masks are rebuilt, the whispers erased. And so the cycle endures. She looks up, her painted face calm once more. This is why you would not survive. Because you would try to carry the storm with you. Try to tell the world what you saw. And here, that is the most dangerous act of all. Outside, the streets dry beneath the sun. The city resumes its hum, merchants hawking wares, children chasing one another, officials striding with scrolls tucked under their arms. The storm is already a fading memory, spoken only in private, quickly silenced when the house's shadow passes. But within you, it remains. The sight of masks melting, of paint streaked, of courtesans bare beneath the rain. The truth revealed, however briefly. And you know, with a certainty that tightens your chest, that you could never silence such a memory. You could never erase the storm, which is why, in the house of endless cycles, you would not last even a single night longer. The storm is gone, the streets are dry, the house is clean once more, its lanterns polished, its silk screens repainted, its cushions arranged neatly in rows. To anyone who steps inside tonight, there will be no trace of thunder, no smell of rain, no memory of paint streaked across tired faces. But the memory lingers in you. You see the cracks, the bare truths revealed when lightning tore through the sky. You carry them like embers that refuse to die. The woman in green watches you carefully as she pours tea. You still see it, she murmurs. The storm, the masks falling. But soon, even we will not. The house does not only silence the streets, it silences us too. At first, you do not understand. But then she explains. When morning comes, we tell ourselves the storm was not so bad. We repaint our faces. We laugh as if nothing happened. We sing the same songs. Day by day, night by night, we convince ourselves it was only a dream, a small interruption in the endless cycle. She lowers her gaze, her hands tightening around the teapot. If we did not, we would break. We would remember too clearly, and remembering is dangerous. Her voice drops to a whisper. Memory is rebellion. Forgetting is survival. Later, in the preparation room, you see it with your own eyes. Courtesans sit before their bronze mirrors, powder in their cheeks, paint in their lips, coiling their hair into knots of elegance. Their movements are steady, their faces calm, as though the storm never touched them. One hums softly as she applies rouge, the tune light and playful, masking the crack in her voice. Another recites poetry under her breath, her tone smooth, her words unshaken. A third laughs with a sister beside her, the sound bright though her eyes remain hollow. They do not speak of the storm. They do not mention the paint that ran, the ornaments that fell, the cracks revealed by lightning. They erase it with every brushstroke, with every song, with every painted smile. The woman in green adjusts her jade pins. Her hands are steady, but her eyes flick toward you briefly, a flicker of truth beneath the mask. She whispers low, so only you can hear. I remember, for now, but soon even I will force myself to forget. It is the only way to endure. She meets your gaze. This is why you would not survive, because you cannot forget. You would carry every storm, every crack, every truth, and the weight of memory would crush you. The madam enters. Her robe is dark, her face unpainted, her hair pinned tight. She surveys the room with a sharp gaze, nodding slightly as she inspects the courtesans. Her voice is calm, deliberate. Tonight, there will be no mention of rain. Tonight, the house is as it has always been. Beautiful, refined, eternal. The courtesans bow in unison, their painted faces serene. Their silence is complete. The storm is gone, the memory erased. The madam turns and departs, her steps steady, her shadow heavy. When she is gone, the room hums again with the sounds of preparation. Powder brushes sweep across cheeks. Rouge is painted into blossoms. Hairpins click into place. The storm is forgotten or forced into forgetting. The woman in green pours powder into her hand, dusting her cheeks with a practiced care. Her reflection in the mirror smiles back at her, flawless, unbroken. But when she lowers her hand, she whispers again, so low you almost do not hear. I still remember. For now. The day passes and the night returns. Lanterns are relit, incense burns, guests arrive with coin and laughter. The cycle begins again, the masks perfect, the songs steady. To them, the house gleams without flaw. To them, the storm never happened. And yet, as the woman in green pours your cup, her sleeve brushing yours, her eyes flick toward you with a faint, fleeting glimmer. The memory remains, hidden, fragile, resisting the tide of forgetting. You sip the wine. Its taste is the same as before, bitter, sweet, numbing. The hall hums as always. The illusion holds once more. But you know, with a certainty that chills you, that you could not survive here. Not because of the wine or the debts or the masks, but because you could not forget. You would carry the storm forever, even as the house buried it in silence. And in this place, memory is the sharpest blade of all. The house glimmers once more, its lanterns bright, its music steady, its courtesans painted into blossoms of beauty. To the guests, nothing has changed. They laugh, they drink, they recite poetry, never suspecting that only nights ago, the storm peeled back the masks and revealed the cracks beneath. But beneath the surface, not everyone has forgotten. The woman in green moves gracefully among the tables, her jade robe trailing like water, her smile flawless. Yet, when she leans close to pour your wine, her voice slips like a thread through the noise. There are some who cannot forget, and the house does not forgive them. You do not have to wait long to see what she means. At the far end of the hall, a courtesan dressed in pale blue begins her performance. Her voice is clear, her song delicate, but her verses are unusual. She sings not of rivers or blossoms, not of loyalty or spring, but of rain. Rain falling across lanterns, rain washing faces clean, rain revealing what lies beneath. The guests smile, some nodding at the elegance of her imagery, thinking it nothing more than a metaphor. But you see the flicker in the madam's eyes. Her gaze sharpens, her lips tighten. The courtesans nearby glance nervously at one another. They hear what the guests do not, the memory hidden in the song. the refusal to let go of the storm. The woman in green lowers her head, her voice barely audible. She remembers too clearly. She sings of what must be forgotten. Her hand trembles slightly as she sets down the wine jar. This will not end well. The song continues, soft and haunting. The courtesan's voice carries notes of sorrow, her eyes lifted, as though she is looking beyond the walls, beyond the cycle, beyond the masks. For a moment, the hall feels bare, the illusion faltering. Guests grow quiet, their laughter fading, their ears caught by something they cannot name. Then the song ends. Silence lingers for a heartbeat too long. The madam rises. Her robe is dark, her face calm, but her eyes burn like coals. She does not raise her voice. She does not need to. The storm is gone, she says evenly. Why sing of it? The courtesan in blue bows deeply, her sleeves trembling. It was only a metaphor, honoured madam. A song of cleansing, of renewal. The madam's lips curve faintly, though it is not a smile. Renewal has its place, but not here, not now. She gestures, and attendants step forward. They guide the courtesan away, her eyes wide, her lips parting as though to speak again. But no words come. The doors close behind her, and the hall exhales nervously. The music resumes, hurried and louder than before. Courtesans laugh too brightly, pouring wine too quickly, eager to smother the silence left in the wake of the song. Guests laugh again, relieved, pretending nothing happened. But you feel the weight in the air, the shadow of what you have just seen. The woman in green kneels beside you, her smile steady, her eyes dark. This is why memory is forbidden. Because memory is dangerous. It reminds us of truth, and truth cannot live here. Her voice drops lower still. That is why you would not survive. Because you cannot help but remember. And remembering here is death. Later, in the quiet chamber, she pours you tea. Her hands are steady now, her mask in place, but her voice carries the echo of sorrow. She was not the first, she says softly. Others have remembered too clearly. Some whispered of storms, some spoke of debts too heavy, some sang of freedom. None remained long. The house swallows them, one by one, until only silence is left. She sets the teapot aside, her eyes meeting yours. For us, forgetting is survival. But for you, forgetting would be impossible. That is why you could not last here. You would carry every storm, every secret, every truth, until the house crushed you. The lantern flickers lower. Outside, thunder grumbles faintly again, though no rain falls. Perhaps it is only memory, echoing in the distance. Perhaps it is a warning. The woman in green closes her eyes briefly, then opens them with her mask intact once more. Tomorrow no one will mention her. The song will be forgotten. Her name will fade. Only the cycle will remain. Her voice softens to a whisper, but you will remember. And that will destroy you. The hall resumes its rhythm, though the storm song lingers like smoke in your chest. Guests laugh again, wine flows, courtesans sing of blossoms and rivers, safe verses, safe smiles, safe illusions. Yet behind the painted screens, silence deepens. Another woman erased, another name lost, another memory buried in ledgers and shadows. The woman in green pours your cup, her hands steady, her smile intact. To anyone watching, she is flawless, the perfect courtesan. But when she leans close, her voice slips out in a thread so fine it almost breaks. There is something I have never forgotten, and perhaps tonight I will tell you. Her words hang heavy between you, more dangerous than thunder. She waits until the hall grows louder, the guests drunker, the madam absent in her chamber. Then she leads you down a narrow corridor, past shuttered doors and painted screens, until you reach a chamber lit by only a single lantern. The air is cooler here, still heavy with incense, but less tainted by wine and laughter. She closes the door softly, then kneels opposite you. For the first time, she removes her jade hairpins, setting them carefully on the low table. Her hair spills across her shoulders, heavy and dark. Without the pins, without the perfect knot, she looks less like a courtesan and more like the girl she once was. I told you of my village, she begins, her voice steady but low. Of the floods, of the debt, of the man who brought me here. That was true, but there is more. Her gaze fixes on the lantern flame, as though afraid to meet your eyes. I had a brother, younger, thin, hungry, always following me in the fields. When the floods came, he grew sick. My parents thought if one of us could be saved, it would be me. So they sent me with the man, believing I would live, believing he would recover. She pauses. Her fingers tighten around her sleeve. He did not. He died before winter ended. And I was here, painted and powdered, singing for strangers. The words hang heavy, raw as open wounds. For a long moment, the only sound is the crackle of the lantern's flame. She exhales slowly, her voice breaking for the first time. That is why I cannot forget. Because if I forget him, then he truly vanishes. And if I carry him, then I carry truth the house cannot erase. Her eyes lift at last, meeting yours. In them, you see no mask, no practiced smile, no jade-cold calculation, only sorrow, sharp and unyielding. This is why you would not survive, she says, because you would cling to memory as I do. And memory here is a blade pressed against your throat. She falls silent, her chest rising and falling with slow breaths. You realize how dangerous her words are. To speak of truth, to carry it openly, to share it with anyone, these are acts that could cost her everything. Yet she has given it to you. You want to respond, but your throat is dry, your tongue heavy. Perhaps nothing needs to be said. The truth exists in the air, undeniable. The woman in green lowers her gaze again. Do not repeat this, not to anyone, not even in whispers. The house hears everything. Later, as she replaces her jade pins and coils her hair once more, the mask returns. Her face smooths, her smile reforms, her posture straightens. By the time she opens the door, she is once again the flawless courtesan, her dangerous confession hidden behind silk and paint. But you know, you carry it now too. Back in the hall, the music swells again. Guests laugh, oblivious. The madam appears briefly, her eyes sharp, her robe dark, her presence heavy. She surveys the hall, then retreats once more. The cycle continues, unbroken. Yet you feel the weight of the woman in green's words pressing into your chest. The memory of her brother, of the fields, of the truth she refuses to forget. It is a fragile ember, dangerous to carry, but impossible to release. And you know, with a certainty that chills you, that she is right. You could never survive here, because you too would cling to memory. And memory is the one thing the house cannot tolerate. The woman in green pours another cup, her smile flawless once more. But when she sets it before you, her fingers brush yours for just a moment, and you understand. Behind the mask, the ember still burns, and now it burns in you as well. The ember she placed in your hands glows quietly, unseen by the rest of the house. To anyone watching, she is the same as before, flawless, painted, graceful, her jade, pins glinting beneath the lanterns. But you know now, there is more, something hidden, fragile, and dangerously alive. The bond feels heavy, almost unbearable. In a place where silence is survival and forgetting is law, to share memory is rebellion, and rebellion is contagious. That night, as the guests stumble from the hall and the lanterns burn low, the woman in green lingers by your side longer than usual. She pours your tea with practiced elegance, but her sleeve brushes your wrist deliberately, her gaze lingering for the briefest of moments. A message. You are not alone now, but you also feel the danger, because the house does not allow bonds unmonitored, secrets unshared. Already, you sense the eyes of others watching. The courtesan in crimson with golden peonies embroidered on her robe glances your way. Her smile is warm, but her eyes linger too long. She has noticed the closeness. She has noticed the whisper behind the mask. Later, in the preparation room, you hear her voice, sweet, mocking, sharp. The woman in green grows fond of her guest, she says to the courtesan in violet. Perhaps too fond. Perhaps she forgets who she belongs to. The courtesan in violet laughs lightly. Fondness is dangerous. The madam does not tolerate bonds she cannot control. Their laughter fades as they paint their lips crimson again, their reflections flawless in bronze mirrors. But their words coil in the air like smoke, rising toward ears that always listen. The woman in green returns to you later, her mask steady but her voice low. Do you see? Already the others notice. Already the house begins to watch. She pours your cup, her hands steady despite the weight of her words. This is why you would not survive, because bonds are dangerous here. They make us human, and humanity is the one thing the house cannot allow. That night, the madam enters the hall. Her robe is dark as ink, her hair pinned tight, her gaze sharp enough to cut through silence. She walks slowly, surveying each courtesan, each guest, her presence heavy as thunderclouds. When her eyes fall on the woman in green, she pauses. The stillness is suffocating. Then she moves on, her robe trailing like a shadow across the floor. The hall exhales, but the warning is clear. Later, in the quiet chamber, the woman in green kneels opposite you. Her mask is flawless again, but her eyes betray a flicker of fear. She removes her hairpins slowly, setting them aside as though shedding armor. The bond we share, she says softly, is already a danger. I should not have spoken. But once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. She closes her eyes, her voice trembling faintly. If the madam learns what I told you, if she suspects I remember too clearly, she will erase me as she erased the others. That is the law of the house. Her hands tighten around her sleeves. And now, because I trusted you, you are in danger too. Bonds spread suspicion. Suspicion spreads punishment. The lantern flickers low. For a long moment, neither of you speak. The silence is heavy, filled with everything unspoken. Finally, she exhales. This is why you would not survive. Because you believe bonds are strength. But here, bonds are blades. They cut more deeply than loneliness. Her words settle in you like stones. You feel the truth of them, heavy and unyielding. Yet the ember remains, glowing quietly in the dark. In the days that follow, you notice it more. Courtesans glancing toward you when you speak to her. Attendants watching more closely when she pours your tea. The madam's shadow lingering longer in the hall. The bond has marked you both. It cannot be unseen. The woman in green continues her role, flawlessly singing, laughing, pouring, bowing. Yet when her eyes meet yours, you see it, the unspoken truth, the ember she placed in your hands, the memory that refuses to die. And you know, with a certainty sharper than ever that the bond you share will not save you. It will destroy you both. The ember you carry has warmed into a steady heat, small but impossible to ignore. It glows beneath your ribs as the house prepares for yet another night, as lanterns are relit and incense winds like pale serpents toward the rafters. The woman in green stands across the hall with the other courtesans, jade pins bright in her hair, her face composed into the same perfect blossom that greeted you on your first step inside. Yet you know now what the blossom hides, and because you know, you are already lost. The music begins. A peeper's first notes tremble like a bird's heartbeat. Wine warms in porcelain cups. The guests arrive in tides, their laughter hurrying ahead of them, their masks lighter to don than the women's. The house breathes, the cycle turns. She glides to your table as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if your presence weren't a signal flare in a dark sea. She kneels, sleeves whispering over lacquered wood. "Drink," she says, almost smiling. "It will quiet the room." You drink, but the room does not quiet. It sharpens. You see the courtesan in crimson watching from the periphery, smile curdled sweet. You see the attendants' paths bend too often toward you, circling like kites tasting a shift in wind. You see the Madame Only briefly pause at the hall's edge, the slightest tilt of her head registering the line drawn, the bond declared. A song rises, safe verses of spring winds and willow shadows. The woman in green does not sing tonight. She pauses, listens, answers with the little nods and close laughter the house trains as carefully as music. Yet her hands rest for an imperceptible heartbeat on the rim of your cup, and, in that pause, the ember within you flares. We have already said too much. The hall leans toward the familiar unraveling. Games, riddles, applause. Then the clatter, the louder boasts. Then the iron hour, when wine loosens hands and tongues. You've lived the cycle enough to predict its turns. But this time the house is not only devouring coin. It is inspecting the seam where two souls have dared to stitch. The woman in green rises. "Walk," she whispers, so softly even the cup cannot hear. She leads you not towards screens or quiet chambers, but toward the back stair, the one servants favor, the one that smells of damp wood and cooled ash. Up 2 flights, down a narrow hall, past rooms of silence where painted fans sleep folded like wings. At the end, a door no broader than a shoulder, its frame buckled by time. Within, a sliver of the city, tiles silvered by moonlight. The night air tastes of rain remembered. She stands, with her palms on the sill, breathing as though air alone were a kind of mercy. "You should go," she says at last. The words find you hollow. "Now? Now." Her voice is level, already returning to the place where decisions can be endured. You carry a truth the house will not keep. It will try to take it from you or bury it with you. Do not give it the chance. You look at the roofline's serrated shadow, the distance to the alley wall, the slick pitch of tile. To climb is to fall, to return is to be consumed. Between the 2 yawns, the ledger-inked names, numbered nights, the slow arithmetic of erasure. You ask, though you already know. The house does not drop its most perfect masks into the street. She looks at you, and for a breath all masks are gone. "I cannot leave. My debt would follow you. My name is written too many times." And, she swallows, eyes bright. "Someone must remember from inside. It is the only rebellion left to me." The ember surges a plea, a protest, a vow you cannot keep. Then I stay. Her smile is small and unbearably kind. You would not last the hour. Footsteps, not hurried assured, the sound of a person who belongs everywhere and fears nothing. The madam's shadow arrives before her body does, pouring into the threshold, filling the room with its familiar, unarguable presence. She regards the two of you, pale moonlight carving her face into planes of porcelain and iron. She does not raise her voice. She never needs to. Guests do not come here, she says. A fact, not a reprimand. The woman in green bows so low, her pins catch the sill. The guest was unwell. I sought air for him. Air is outside, the madam replies. Another fact. Her gaze turns to you, measuring as she measured you the first night. What she waits now is different. Not coin, not appetite, but disruption. She sees the seam. She calculates the cost of cutting and of letting the thread run. A kindness was offered to you, she says to you. You mistake it for permission. Your tongue builds a sentence of protest, collapses under its own courage. The madam lifts a finger a fraction. Silence settles deeper. Somewhere below, a drum shifts its rhythm from entertainment to endurance. To survive a place, she continues, one must accept its rules. You have not. You will not. And so, you must leave. She turns, already done with you. Already writing the next line in ink you will never see than pauses. Tonight. Relief strikes with a traitor's precision, sharp, shameful, human. But relief cools to dread in the same breath. Because tonight is not mercy. It is a window that slams shut behind you. Because leaving is not escape. It is exile with a mark the city recognizes. And her? The question is foolish as it escapes you, and yet you cannot hold it. The madam's eyes do not move. She belongs where she is written. A ledger, not a sentence. The door frame, a judge. The moon, a witness. The woman in green has not lifted her head. Honored madam, she says, perfectly. Allow me to return the guest to the hall and see him out. A thin pause, but approval clicked into place. Do so. Then report to the ledger room. The shadow withdraws. Her footsteps become the house again. You are left with the woman in green and the unspent weight of everything you will not say without breaking both your lives. She straightens mask, sliding home with the soft inevitability of habit. You will go by the front, she says. You will not look back. You will not speak in the street. You will keep the ember small and hidden. You will live. And you? I will remember, she says, and I will not let remembering make me sing. You descend together, two figures in green and silence. In the hall, the last turn of the cycle is underway. Lauter brittle, music thinned to a silver thread, wine spilling in small, resentful arcs. She steers you between tables as if through surf, past officials pretending virtue, merchants pretending nobility, scholars pretending not to drown. At the threshold, she stops. The doors stand like a cliff over a sea you once called a city. Dawn waits beyond it, not yet risen, but promised. She bows a perfect bow she's performed 1,000 times, and this one breaks you because it is honest. Survive, she says. You step into the corridor of night air, the world's cooler breath rinsing incense from your lungs. The street is empty except for a broom's soft rasp, a stray dog's indifferent patrol. Behind you, wood moans as the doors begin to close. You turn because you are human, because instinct is older than instruction, and catch a last sliver. Her profile lit by a lantern's worn gold, the smallest tilt of her head that says, what the house forbids words to carry. Remember me as I remember. Then the doors seal. The dream is a wall again. You stand there until the sky loosens from black to blue, until vendors lift their shutters and steam writes gentle characters in the air, until a magistrate's bearer passes with empty dignity, and the temple bell counts the hour the house calls morning. You walk, finally, carrying the ember like contraband. You will not speak, not here, not in daylight. The city wears the house like a second robe. To tug it is to tear skin. But you will carry. You will let memory burn your pockets thin. You will remember the ledger's quiet cruelty, the sick room's hush, the poems that wore plum blossoms like armor, the storm that washed paint to truth, the kindness that fastened chains with silk knots, the bond that became a blade. You will remember the girl from the rice fields and the brother whose winter never ended. You will remember the woman in green who learned to survive by not singing her memory aloud. And you will know, as surely as you know your own breath, why you would not survive a night in the forbidden pleasure houses of ancient China. Because here, survival demands forgetting. Because here, love must be whispered to the wick and never to another soul. Because here, truth must be dressed in flowers until it dies of suffocation. Because here, the night does not end at dawn. It ends only when you agree to call it a beautiful day. You cannot. You will not. The ember will not allow it. So you leave still within the city that pretends not to know what feeds, carrying a small, seditious light that the house could not ledger and could not extinguish. And behind the painted doors, the music begins again.